For people who don't know, this is prolific Substack writer, Twitter poster.
Yes.
Michael Tracey.
Impressive title, right? Just a poster.
Just a poster. Well, posters are a big deal now.
Hey, yeah.
The internet has become real life, right?
If you can't post, then you ain't... Can we curse?
Yeah.
You ain't shit.
There you go.
I shouldn't have even asked if we can curse. Of course, that's understood.
Why would you say of course? You just assume that...
Well, I don't know. I seem to recall you dropping epithets on occasion. You don't?
Not like that.
Okay.
Those are all AI generated.
Okay.
Okay. What are we talking about? What's
I
going
don't know anything. So, okay, I'm sort of curious. So, we did a remote stream, I think it was in 2022.
Okay. Was this about like whether or not something counted as a tank?
No, that's a meme that people still remember that they use against me as though I didn't, because it was a whole nomenclatural thing, a semantic thing around
Gotcha.
the provision of heavy armored vehicles to Ukraine by Biden, and did those count as a tank? It's not even really worth going over, but yeah, there's a segment of my trolls who are still fixated on that.
Gotcha.
But it was about something to do with Ukraine, because that creature Vaush did a whole, he invited me on for a whole debate, and he ended up screaming at me and saying I loved Hitler and saying that I'm evil and don't believe anything I say.
Okay.
And then I guess you were told about this Vaush encounter by your followers, and then you invited me on.
Okay.
But one thing I found amazing, because it was like I thought it was a pretty constructive conversation. I don't know if you recall it, but then afterwards I realized that you were playing video games the whole time, and I was just amazed. Well, I mean, it's cool, I guess. I just had no notion that that's what you were doing.
Oh.
The whole time. So do you still do that?
Not anymore.
Okay.
But I have I'm on Vyvanse now, so I can
There
focus better. But before I would just need something occupying my hands to do something or whatever.
I gotcha. But I was just, because we went like 3 hours, and I'm like, and then people were telling me afterwards, hey, he was just playing a game the whole time. And it was just sort of funny to not even realize what was going on in real time.
Do you play games at all, or?
I play video games, but I kind of compartmentalize my video games so I'm not multitasking while I'm playing them.
Sure, I know. I understand that.
I just play console single player games on occasion. I don't even want to incorporate any kind of social element to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Doug Festney, thank you for gifting subs. But generally, whatever game I'm playing is a game I've played a ton before. So even though I'm playing while chatting, I'm really just having a conversation, and I'm probably just like kind of automated,
kind of
like jumping
occupying
through.
your hands.
Yeah, because it's probably
just sort of like this auditory stimuli that you need to. That's not really mentally intensive.
Basically, something like that. Yeah.
Do you play?
Somebody donated something.
Oh, okay.
It shows that back there. Don't worry about it.
I thought maybe they were onto us.
Yeah.
Do you play console games?
Not as much anymore.
Okay.
I grew up playing console games, but then I think once you transition to doing PC heavy stuff, and then as of recently, like a lot of console stuff releases for PC anyway. So
I never really transitioned to the console heavy thing. Like I didn't have a video game console for like 10 years, and then. Do
you mind me asking how old are you?
37.
Okay. Me
too.
How old are you? 37.
Oh, there
December
you go.
88.
I'm August 88.
Okay, cool. Okay, so older than
I guess that makes
older
us,
and wiser
I guess
a little
that
bit,
bonds
right?
us in some way.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 3 months older and wiser than you.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't have a console for like 10 years, right?
Okay.
Because when I was an adolescent, that's my number one activity was just playing video games, Xbox, whatever.
Wait, you didn't have a console? You didn't have a PC?
I didn't have any consoles, and then I had a computer always, but none that was really set up for game.
Wait, how did you play games all the time if you didn't have a console?
I didn't play any really for 10 years.
Oh, you didn't play for 10 years. Okay, sorry, gotcha.
And then somebody who I won't name convinced me to get a Switch, ostensibly just so we could play some casual Mario Kart. But then, of course, I couldn't control myself, and it branched out within like a matter of weeks to me getting like this entire Switch back catalog that I missed, and then a PS5. So I basically spent like a month playing like the best games from the prior 10 years that I had missed.
Okay.
I mean, it was awesome. Like I hadn't played Uncharted, I hadn't played Red Dead Redemption 2, I hadn't played Mario Odyssey, I hadn't played Breath of the Wild, but I wasn't very productive during that month.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
But recently I can moderate. So I haven't really played anything since January, where I kind of did like the first third of Tears of the Kingdom.
Which is that a Zelda game?
Yeah, it's like the sequel basically to Breath of the Wild.
Okay, gotcha.
But prior to that, I played Donkey Kong Bonanza on Switch. Have you played that? Do you have a Switch too?
No. My last console was like.
Are you a gamer or not? I thought this is like a
PC gamer.
Okay.
PC gamer.
I thought this is like fundamentally a gaming sort of stream
Well, no,
operation
now it's fundamentally
that extended into political stuff.
It did. It extended back in 2016. So now we're mainly political with a little bit of gaming.
Okay,
I used to be a professional StarCraft 2 player, but now we do mainly horrible politics.
Oh, really?
And
okay,
yeah.
so yeah, that's a different stratosphere than I ever was. I played competitive like Worms Armageddon for a bit.
I like Worms. I remember Worms. Yep.
Worms was good. But Donkey Kong Bonanza was great, and then Astrobot on the PS5 was great. It's like basically the first time that Sony came up with a Mario equivalent.
Okay.
But other than that, like, there's not a whole lot that really...
I would argue thing like Rayman and Spyro the Dragon were more...
Arguably.
Okay.
I mean, in recent years anyway.
In recent years, yeah.
And it's the first one that made use of the like computing power of the PS5.
Okay.
But Astrobot was phenomenal. Donkey Kong Bonanza was great, but like there's nothing really other than that that's come out recently that I'm even that interested in. So I'm sort of like forced to moderate my video game usage anyway.
Okay. Cool.
Does anybody care about that, or like does anybody care about?
It's
my
good
video
background. It
game
helps
history?
us make an emotional connection to you as a speaker. So.
It can, yeah, it can. So you ever played like Red Dead Redemption 2 and stuff, or?
I've played games in that vein. I didn't play that one exactly, but like I played like The Witcher 3 and The Last of Us and what like these types of games.
I played The Last of Us,
yeah,
and The Last of Us 2. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is like a landmark in just pop culture.
Yeah, a lot of people liked it. Big
it's like
game.
the best-selling entertainment product of all time or something.
Well, that's probably GTA 5 or Minecraft or Roblox, but.
Well, maybe it was like the
it was a really big
selling.
It was a really big one.
There was some metric by which it was the most commercially successful something or other.
With a horse in it, I think. With a horse and tuberculosis, but it was a slim category. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is?
So why am I in Miami?
Yeah, what did you do before? Who were you talking to?
So I told you on the elevator ride up that I don't often reach out, quote unquote, to anybody with any kind of media platform to appear on their platform. But I had recalled that you were in Miami somewhere. I was coming to Miami anyway, so I figured, what the heck? Let me reach out to Destiny.
Okay.
Because that could be funny.
You can call me Steven in real life.
Steven?
And funny. Okay, so there's a joke to you. Gotcha.
Wait, so real IRL people don't call you Destiny?
No.
Damn. I thought you kept the illusion going like it was a WWF gimmick, like The Undertaker, he would go out in public, and he wouldn't be The Undertaker per se, but he would kind of have like almost the aura of The Undertaker about him because he didn't want to break the gimmick.
Nope. But I'm an asshole when I'm Steven too, so I'm like the same person, just with a different name.
Okay. So I was
my pro gaming background was I was Neo Destiny or Destiny, so I just kept the name for all my brand and everything. So that's why. But
okay, that's cool. I mean, hey, it's a brand, right?
Yeah.
My brand is just my name. Like that's not cool.
Yeah.
So I got invited to come on to appear on a show. I didn't actually even know what I was agreeing to do. I just know that I was invited to come down to Miami, and it was under the auspices of talking to the guy who was probably most responsible for popularizing Pizzagate.
Okay.
In 2016.
What was his name?
Ben Swan.
Do I know this guy?
He was a local TV reporter at the same time, TV anchor for like maybe a CBS affiliate in Atlanta, and he did a segment on Pizzagate. I think it was in January of 2017. So maybe he wasn't most responsible, but he was the guy in the sort of traditional media who actually covered Pizzagate, quote unquote, if you could call it that.
Gotcha. Did this guy have the Trump golden shoes? I don't know if I debated this guy or not. No, I don't think I have. Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, more recently, after the latest production of Epstein files, he's been on like a victory tour saying, Pizzagate is vindicated, Pizzagate is true, Jeffrey Epstein is Pizzagate. I could never quite tell what his argument exactly was in terms of how the Epstein files vindicated Pizzagate or proved Pizzagate is true, because my understanding was that there were never any child sex slaves found at the Comet Pizza restaurant, Comet Ping Pong Pizza restaurant.
Yeah, well, I mean, there wasn't even a basement that the place had, and supposedly it was in the basement where the CP orders.
Whether there was a basement or not, I think the more relevant factor is like whether there are actually any child sex slaves.
Well, the basement is an important part. How are you going to have sex slaves on the first floor when everybody just looking at the windows, you know?
People seem to focus a lot on whether or not there was a basement. I mean, in whatever floor of the dwelling we're talking about, had child sex slaves been discovered there, like that would probably be the most relevant investigatory finding.
Sure, I guess.
And there weren't any, and yet like there's still like this demographic of the internet that is very invested in declaring that Pizzagate was true. So I figured we'd probably be talking about that when he invited me. I just accepted it because, I hadn't traveled in maybe two or 3 months, so I figured why the hell not? And they spirited me out to this like cavernous studio somewhere on the outskirts of Miami.
Okay.
And we did it on Thursday, and it was a pretty cordial discussion. It started out with a lot of Iran and Trump stuff, and then like the second half was kind of Pizzagate / Epstein, and he kind of like agreed with me. Like he ended up basically agreeing with me, or at least claiming that he agreed with me, which is sort of interesting because he's one of the last guys you would ever expect to concede anything in that vein, because his whole sort of identity is wrapped up with having been the guy who was trying to blow the whistle on Pizzagate.
Yeah.
And all these years later, he's finally vindicated by the Epstein files. And yet, hey, I mean, nice enough guy. I mean, I don't really know what the business operation is going there. Like, I know he did register in 2022 under FARA with the Department of Justice because he was producing content on behalf of some Russian outfit.
Okay. Props to him for disclosing.
Yeah,
and not taking money secretly.
He disclosed it. Yeah, I mean, so
this is basically all podcasts today are when people go on these types of shows, the conversations have to be friendly and there's no adversarial stuff.
Yeah.
So like you can be a guy who thinks that the earth is round and they can be a flat earther, and you can come on and say something like, well, we've done a lot of tests and it's proven that the earth is round. And they're like, I think I've heard of those. Yeah. So what do you think about like the firmament? You're like, well, I think the firmament is completely and totally fake. And the guy will be like, that's okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, I think it's real, but I kind of agree with you. And it's just like that for 4 hours.
That's the Joe Rogan sensibility, right?
But that's everybody now. Everybody does this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, everybody emulates Joe Rogan. He's the big kahuna, right? Whether or not they're conscious of it. I mean, they're
very conscious of it.
Some may be, some may not be. If you're just kind of absorbing what the prevailing kind of ethos is of podcast culture, then what you're absorbing is fundamentally something that originates with Joe Rogan.
Sure, yeah. When I say those people are conscious of it, what I mean is that like they explicitly go out of their way to avoid critical conversations, and they explicitly invite people that they know are going to play ball and be nice and have those types of conversations.
But Joe Rogan, I mean, you sit him in front of virtually anybody for 2.5 or 3 hours, he'll end up at least kind of in spirit agreeing with them.
Yeah,
which can be good in terms of just a casual conversation if you're not trying to do anything adversarial. Like if you're just chatting with somebody. Like I know when I do journalistic type interviews and I'm just trying to like understand what people's beliefs are or what they think about a certain issue, it's just like an ordinary person. I'm not necessarily going to be probing them in this interrogative way as if I'm interviewing a politician.
Sure.
But if you are interviewing a politician, then maybe your mindset should shift a little bit. Like when Joe Rogan had Trump for 3 hours, like a week before the election in 2024, and it ended just being this chummy gab fest. Like that was a threshold crossing event for me in terms of the ire with which the ire that I plan on now directing at the podcast class.
Yeah.
Because that did a disservice to the entire country.
I mean, I would agree, but yeah, I don't think that's by accident. I think that's by design. I think they know what's going on there, because if they had other motivations, you would expect to see them acting differently.
Who's them? Who's
like the people in
this
in the podcast class? Like they know that there are certain opinions that they can talk about, that there are certain people that they can bring on to echo those opinions that vibe well with their audience. And they know to bring those people on to do those types of podcasts and give those types of messages and then get those types of clicks and views and then make the money on that stuff. And then that's like that at the end of the day, that's where they're going to be,
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably is the case, meaning a by design philosophy for people who are lower on the food chain than Joe Rogan. But at this point, Joe Rogan's like a Johnny Carson. Like he can have basically anybody that he wants on the podcast.
But who does he invite on?
Well,
it's the same ideologically backed people over and over. How many? Like,
I believe that.
Constantine just went on. They've been on like 6 times.
Yeah.
It was the 7th time. It's not like they're short of guests. They just had. Do you know who Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson are? These people are crazy out there conservatives. Like Rachel Wilson has written a book on like satanic like ownership of children. Like they're crazy people. But he just had both of them on.
That's
they're
big right now on the podcast circuit. Satanic
kind of stuff. Yeah,
children
but like it's just because they're kind of right wing and they'll reinforce those views. And like that's it. It's just that over and over again. Did you follow the big debate between is it Graham Hitchcock and Flint Dibble?
I did end up watching some of that, even
like
though
Rogan
I'm
sided with the guy who believes that we're this close to finding Atlantis. Like that's who Rogan sided with. I don't think
Flint
that's an accident.
Dibble was more of
Graham
like
Hancock,
an actually reputable archaeologist or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Or paleontologist.
100%. Yeah, it's not even close.
I wasn't really invested in that debate. It was just sort of interesting that was being hosted by Rogan and like people really were passionate about it. So I was just kind of like a bystander to it.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's not like a coincidence that, especially in today's political climate, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but if you give me like one belief of a person, I can probably predict like 12 other beliefs just by you telling me a thing.
They clustered together.
Yeah, super clustered.
But with Rogan, like, I mean, I believe that he would have actually had Kamala Harris on the podcast if it came together, right? In
no shot. What you just said doesn't even make sense. If it came together, right? I think that if you really wanted to talk to the Democratic nominee, the person who at the time, if you're being good faith, like it was never a hopeless race for her, right? Like it could have been anywhere from slightly favored to slightly disfavored, but no sane person was like, oh, she's never going to win, right? If you knew that you had an opportunity to interview this person, you would move heaven and earth to do so, 100%. There's no world where like, it didn't work out that I couldn't interview the vice president of the United States or potential future president of the United States.
Yeah. On the other hand, you could see it being like a bit of a power move, meaning you have to come to him, which is what Trump did, and that's what J.D. Vance did, and Kamala.
I think they flexed to make that work.
They couldn't work it out logistically. But
wait, that wasn't true. Though.
Like, okay, whatever.
Didn't they move or travel to do the Trump show? Did Trump go to Austin for it?
I'm almost positive, and you can look it up. I'm almost positive that Trump went to the studio in Austin.
I feel like they tried to make accommodation somehow. I don't know if it was by the day or something else, because I felt like for Kamala, I thought that they had the opportunity because Kamala was doing something in, I want to say Dallas or Houston, but Joe Rogan said that they had like,
it was in Houston.
I wish I could remember. Yeah. And Joe Rogan
but
and them.
Kamala's people wanted Joe Rogan to come to Houston,
but I think they were, I feel like they were willing to go to Austin, but Joe said like he had a baseball game or something. It was something really stupid to do something. Or it could have happened
UFC
if they wanted to do something. I would have to go back and look up the details, but that's just one of those things where it's kind of like if you're texting somebody and they never respond and they're like, well, I'm busy. It's like, well, if you cared, I think you'd probably just respond.
But Joe Rogan, he'll occasionally have on like Bernie Sanders. He had John Fetterman on.
Okay, stop.
What?
Yes. But like, there's a difference. You hear people say this. Sorry,
you're making me defend.
You're triggering me. Wait, I just need to say this. Right? You've met these people. Actually, I don't even know where your political leanings are. But like, there are these people who are like, oh no, I talk to people on the right and left. Oh, who do you talk to on the right? Everybody. Who do you talk to on the left? Oh, so many left-leaning people. They would say before. Now it's a little. They'd say like, I talked to RFK Jr. I talked to Tulsi Gabbard.
Sure.
Now it's John Fetterman and Ro Khanna and maybe Bernie Sanders. It's like, okay, so you're talking to like the most outer perimeter fringe kind of like left-leaning people, but like you're never gonna have like an establishment like AOC type or.
So you think he wouldn't have Gavin Newsom on?
I
think he would. I mean, I think
Am I wrong? Wait, I thought wasn't Gavin challenging
him
to go on? Am I making this up? Didn't Gavin tweet out saying that like let me on your podcast, and Joe Rogan was saying no? I think.
Yeah, I think I remember something like that. You might be right.
Mm-hmm. So like that's by design, right?
I'll be shocked if that doesn't happen eventually, though.
If it doesn't happen eventually, I don't think it will, because I think Joe needs to be in the hug box.
Yeah.
Which is sad, I think.
You start with Joe Rogan.
He wants
to be president so bad. The governor of the most populous state and the host of one of the most popular podcasts are feuding.
This is Gavin Newsom.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, who hosts his own podcast, has invited Joe Rogan onto his show and publicly asked to be invited onto Rogan's show.
Joe, why won't you have me on the show? He won't answer. It's one way, and he has guests come.
That's crazy, right?
Look, like Sean Ryan's, he's another sort of right-wing podcaster guy. He had Gavin on.
True. He did, yeah.
For 4 hours. Holy crap.
Because I think Gavin will go anywhere, right?
Yeah,
but Joe Rogan is a pussy-ass bitch. He won't. He will not talk to people that have substantial disagreements with him.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right on some level. Again, I'm genuinely not even trying to. I'm very antagonistic toward Joe Rogan at this point, just because, like it or not, people view him as an authoritative source of news.
I know, unfortunately.
And then this whole little deflection pivot where I'm just a comedian, bro. I'm a dummy. Nobody should take me seriously. Meanwhile, like for the whole month of February into March, he was just blasting out the most preposterous Epstein files revelations that Jamie was sending over to him based on whatever had risen to the top of the algorithmic slop heap that day and presenting it as like credible, proven information to millions of people. And, it's kind of, I don't want to get too melodramatic about it, but like it is dangerous in the sense that if he's telling this mass audience, right, the biggest audience on the internet, that as he did, like maybe it was February 15th or something like that, that these prophecies that had come from Whitney Webb, I don't know if you know who that is,
No.
I don't know. I won't even
You
try to
said
explain.
prophecy, so I'll assume she's a crazy person. Yeah.
She's crazy enough, but she's seen as this very reputable person in terms of like the conspiracy adjacent journalism world, to the degree that exists.
Okay.
But Joe Rogan was saying, man, this Whitney Webb chick, she's been proven 100% right. How does she do it?
Oh.
Because they pulled up this tweet of hers from April of 2020 that went newly viral after the Epstein files came out, where Whitney Webb is like, how is it that Leslie Wexner got away with trafficking and financing the trafficking and raping of thousands of American children? And it's been covered up. So Joe Rogan is now resurfacing this tweet from 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. No, 6 years ago? My arithmetic is off. As if to say that like this woman who was a prophet, like shouting into the darkness 6 years ago, has now been proven dramatically correct. If that's the message that you're telling to millions upon millions of people who are impressionable and who are looking at you as a kind of authoritative news disseminator, then there's going to be a subset of those people who have probably some predisposition toward mental instability and think that maybe now it's incumbent upon them to take retributive action. And there was a guy, I'm not blaming Joe Rogan personally for this or saying he's causally responsible.
He is. Go ahead.
But, like not long thereafter, there was a 21-year-old guy who became newly obsessed with the Epstein files and tried to launch an armed incursion into Mar-a-Lago and got shot dead. So, I mean, that's kind of what you're incubating out there. And Joe Rogan is at the top of the pyramid in terms of what our contemporary information environment is revolving around. So
yeah,
that's my big problem with Joe Rogan. And then just like a few days ago, somebody, because people like try to rile me up and send me these clips, and then I have no self-control, so I look at them. But he was saying, oh yeah, Netanyahu, Joe Rogan was saying that he thinks that Netanyahu is dead.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was like a thing in the past couple dages on social media.
Because there was like a thing where his hand looked like this or something, and people were like, where is his thumb? Or why does he have like 5 fingers? Or it's AI or something. And it was just like,
and Joe Rogan was saying to this other comedian guy he had on, look, we know that Netanyahu's brother was just killed in an airstrike. So, it stands to reason that Bibi himself is also dead. And Joe Rogan was literally basing his statement of fact on a bogus viral tweet that had just proclaimed Netanyahu's brother had died in an airstrike based on a viral, image that had gone around of a house fire in New Jersey. And that's what Joe Rogan just looks at and like believes without like any second guessing whatsoever, and then blasts out to the biggest audience on the internet.
I mean, do you remember the whole kitty litter fiasco?
That
was where Rogan, I don't even remember if he saw this on a Facebook posting or somebody emailed him or whatever, but somebody said, and it was totally made up. It came out that this was totally made up, but he started this whole national panic where somebody was like, they're putting kitty litter boxes in classrooms now for kids that identify as furries.
Yes.
And it was just completely not true. And this would like captured the Republican public thought for probably a month or so. And it eventually came out it was all just bullshit. It was just a lie.
Right.
But I mean, it's obviously a lie. But it's just like the fact that these people are so hungry for these things, and it tells you something about the person, and it should tell them something about themselves that they fall for it so easily, where they should think like, okay, well, if I fell for this and this and this and this and this and this and this, maybe I need to change the way that I'm approaching something or create some type of new mental guard to not fall into this.
Does it.
Never, no. Which
He's
is
like
why
incorrigible.
Yes.
You think at some point he would feel some public spirited obligation, right? Just given his reach, given the enormity of his influence, to have like a thought that's percolating around in his brain somewhere that before he just blasts out this info that's like not just about something about comedy or something inconsequential, some casual little piece of banter or gossip, but like something that's directly pertaining to ongoing, very significant news events like a war, or an election, or like a alleged child rape atrocity, that like maybe he would do like a second or two of confirmatory research, but he just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like it's not funny anymore.
We are way past that point. Yeah. But I mean, like the way that I look at it is I just look at where all the incentives are, right? Like when he does these things, you get a ton of positive feedback. You make a lot of money. You retain your viewer base. Like everything is just going really well for you. Imagine if there was some story that came out about Kamala or Biden that was negative, or about Trump that was positive, and you had an inkling that it wasn't real. What, besides personal integrity, of which Joe Rogan has none of, why would you stop that story? There's no accountability. Nobody's suing anybody for defamation. Your audience obviously doesn't care.
There's no disincentive.
Yeah, exactly. So they just follow kind of the tide on that. And
if anything, it made him the most coveted political endorsement in the entire country in 2024.
Yep.
So why would he change what he's doing?
Exactly. Yeah, which is very, very, very annoying. Yeah.
Can I ask? So what is your? How often do you stream? Do you stream every day?
I'm supposed to stream 8 hours a day. I try to. Yeah.
And do you ever take days off or anything, or?
I mean, I travel for events, so like I'm going out of town tomorrow to go to ASU, so that'll be like 2 or 3 days off streaming.
But if you're just home,
I'm always doing emails or work. I'm generally always working.
You wouldn't take a day off from the streaming.
If I do, it's because I have to catch up on other stuff. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And how do you think that? I'm distracted by that concept.
Good. That's what it's here for me to gain a psychological edge.
It's to throw off the weirdos who come to your apartment
and
want to sit in front of this very impressive setup that I have no technical ability to construct on my own, definitely. How do you think that the constant streaming and the constant almost public exposure, maybe exposure is a little bit of an overstatement or a little bit of a kind of serious way of putting it, but like constantly being in public view for so long, day after day, do you think there are any downsides to that, just in terms of your ability to think, like to almost have private thoughts that you can come up with in the sanctity of your own mind and not necessarily have an audience of people scrutinizing like every little gradation in your thought process? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be. I think it just depends on the type. I think for most people there probably is. I think I'm pretty lucky in that I started streaming early. I built a fan base doing StarCraft, and then I transitioned into politics still like pretty early on, the whole kind of streaming era. Like I was the first person on Twitch to really do politics at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like when was that roughly? Like what year?
Would have been around 2016. They used to ban my streams early on for a day because you weren't technically allowed to do non-gaming content
When
initially.
did Hassan start?
He got his start on my stream on 2017. Yeah, it's my worst contribution to the world.
I met him at the Young Turks facility in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know who he was. He was just introduced to me as like a relative of Cenk. I didn't know he was going to become this big behemoth.
Yeah.
I have like people who are, like I had a cousin of mine tell me that basically all my cousin knew of what I had done, quote unquote, professionally, is that I had been on like Hassan's stream at one point, or I had been referenced by him. So, I mean, he seems to like be a big presence, right?
Yeah, he's like a leftist, anti-American, Turkish Nepo baby that is committed to the destruction of the Western order. So, what are you going to do?
You said it, not me. You said it, not me. I'm just sort of fascinated by the lifestyle,
The hyper-consumerist, hyper-capitalist, ultra-materialist one where he preaches socialist values all the time?
No, I just meant the 24/7 ubiquitous streaming lifestyle. Like, do you ever think there are any downsides to it?
Yeah, there can be for sure. It just depends on like people are going to have inclinations towards certain things, and I'm probably lucky in that the time I was born in, and then whatever biological genes are turned on or off, like I can sit in an area for a long time. I like to play games. I'm relatively oppositional in nature, so I like fighting with people.
Right.
So
same here. I won't deny that.
All of these traits, well, even for what you do, right? Like there are a lot of people that would kill themselves if they had to deal with your Twitter feed for a day or two.
That is true.
So it's just like, picking these things, and then you try to maximize for the good things. So like I enjoy streaming because I can do arguably whatever I want.
Because sometimes I think to myself, gee, are there any almost like psychological trade-offs that I'm not fully conscious of in my having now been a nerd to, millions of people on the internet constantly screaming the most foul possible things at me day after day, where it has no longer any kind of psychological impact on me, at least in a way that would dissuade me from doing what I'm doing, right? Especially pedophile recently, because
I've seen
I have my perspective on the Epstein matter. But even before that, it was something else, right? Now I just sort of wonder, like, if you were a well-adjusted, normal person, you probably would have an emotional reaction or some kind of negative psychological reaction to people just flinging these most repulsive slurs at you. And now that no longer really has any kind of tangible effect on me, is that good, bad? I mean, there's nothing I can really do about it, but sometimes I do ponder, what did I get myself into, and like what maybe am I not fully cognizant of in terms of how that's affected my psyche?
I think the things you're not cognizant of are generally going to be negative. So like in psychology, you can have like a positive condition, or you can have the absence of something like a negative condition. I think what you're usually not aware of as much are the negatives. So I moved a lot of my my personal life used to be very public on stream, and then I kind of made an even heavier slant towards just political content at the end of 2023, early 2024. So I started moving a lot of my political life or my personal life off stream. And one of the things that I noticed that was just kind of funny to notice is that like if I'm talking to a person, that because I'm making kind of like more real life friends at Miami Beach now, I notice that like if I'm talking to you, I actually don't have to worry that every single thing I say to you is at some point going to be just posted somewhere on the internet. Like it's kind of a nice feeling.
It's just sort of funny that you did have to be mindful of that
because before it's like I have to think like if this leaks, what is this person going to say or whatever, because it's just like because everybody's going to talk shit, everybody leaks, everybody does or whatever. There's that, and then the idea of like meeting people on your own terms and not meeting somebody who already knows like every single thing about you and already has other people's opinions about you, or when it's like associating with normal people who are also kind of involved or notice like the online stuff can be weird sometimes because it's hard to explain to somebody like why are there a million people that you say think you're a murderer or a fascist or a Nazi or a pedophile or whatever. Like that can be hard to explain to a normal
violently
person.
angry at you right now on the internet.
Yeah.
So what do you mean what do you mean when you say that in the past you had sort of lived your personal life online? Like what? Because I'm actually not even familiar. Like what did that consist of? And was that like a conscious choice on your behalf?
Yeah, it was a conscious choice. I did a huge variety of content. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of like messy like friend stuff, dramatic stuff, like people coming on to debate and argue over pop culture issue, feminist stuff, red pill stuff, just crazy online people. I had like a revolving door in this Discord of people that would come in and out. It was just like it was very, very, very
so
crazy.
People wanted to debate like your personal relationships and things?
Sometimes it could be that, or it could just be like cultural related issues, or because I was friends with a lot of these people, so a lot of that bled into like the streaming stuff as well. So
yeah. I've always made a point to never really discuss my personal life
That's probably
on
better.
the internet.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything particularly salacious about it,
Sure.
believe me. It's just that like I don't want to even open that up for public scrutiny in any way because like stuff could just get derailed and
of course, yeah.
blah 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 blah.
Yep.
So yeah, that's always been something I've been instinctively averse to doing. But I could see the appeal of it because like if people are following you day in and day out, it's almost like a mini soap opera, right?
Yeah, and
like,
it also it depends because there's like a huge upside for YouTubers and especially streamers because they're watching you so much. So the closer the connection they feel, probably the more it strengthens their attachment to your content. But if you're like a writer on Substack or you're doing strictly political stuff, well, that personal connection doesn't matter as much because nobody's gonna be like, oh my God, it's this guy, and I know like his wife is on Twitter, and I'm gonna see what he wrote about this, Iran invasion, right? Like the connection is not like the same thing. Yeah.
So what was the turning point for you where you said I have to kind of separate out my personal life?
I got an official ADHD diagnosis and started taking amphetamines. So
okay.
I could focus more on reading stuff, and I didn't have as much of kind of like the thrill seeking of like just the crazy online fights.
Okay.
So I was more just kind of like focused on just political stuff, basically. Yeah, that was a big change.
Maybe I'll have to go back and watch our stream from 2022 and see if I can detect any differences in your presentation in like the pre-stimulant phase versus the post-stimulant phase.
It probably wouldn't be as much because when I was talking to you, it was still kind of like political stuff, but the content around that time, there's just a lot of insanely crazy. It was just, I can't even explain it to you. Just like imagine like the worst type of reality TV, but like with a million different issues, cultural and political, and just people involved. It's a lot.
Wait, so Hassan got his start on your stream. Like, how did that come about?
So Hassan had a debate in 2016, or it might have been early 2017 with Charlie Kirk. And then he wanted to he wanted to get involved in the online streamer space because he was big on kind of Facebook, and he was kind of growing up under the Young Turks on their media network. And he reached out to me to get debate feedback and advice with Charlie Kirk. And we had a call, and we kind of got along pretty well. And then we were kind of, I would say, friends for the next like year or two. And then, we went our separate ways. We'll say that, yeah.
People must have enjoyed following the every latest development in terms of that relationship, right?
Well, I mean, I would say the vast majority of it was very not dramatic.
Okay.
There was a thing that I hadn't learned yet, a personal lesson that I needed to learn on the internet, which is if you attack only one side and you never actually put a stake in the ground against the other side, people have the perception of you as being way more on that side, and you gather a lot more followers on that side than you realize. So have you ever heard of Gamergate?
Yes.
Okay, so in the 2016, 2017 era, the whole like world of video games started to become way more like
Yeah,
Trump,
no, I
political,
know.
everything
I
else.
saw it
Yeah.
at the time. Then there was the definitive Gawker article on
Yes, with
Gamergate.
Zoe
Remember that?
Quinn and all
Yeah.
this bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah. So because I was in the,
There's too many women in video games.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was very like argumentative debate, like aggressive coded, but I was also like left leaning. So I came up debating a lot of these like big right wing gaming adjacent internet figures. So I had a huge debate with a guy called Jontron and then like Sargon of Akkad and like all of these people. And when I was doing that, and then when Hassan kind of started joining my stream, there was a decent chunk of my fan base that I didn't realize this because I thought they were kind of joking. They're like, "Oh yeah, like Destiny's like basically a socialist, like ha ha ha," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, you know, not really." And then at some point, when me and Hassan started to run into more and more disagreements, there came a point where I realized, like, hold on, I am absolutely not a fucking socialist. I think all of this is the dumbest, most retarded shit in the universe. And then when me and Hassan had our big split, it was actually me and Hassan, and then kind of Vosh too. Vosh also came up in my community. I'm sorry, but I when I split, I like chopped like probably 30 or 40% of my fan base off, and then they went that way because they were socialists, and then I kept my liberals, and then we did our thing. Yeah.
Vaush is probably the most unpleasant person I've ever had to attempt to interact with for anything.
Okay, that's good for you because there are way worse people out there. But Vosh can be mean sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, it just like literally, I'm not even making a political point.
Sure.
It's just that in terms of the.
Have you talked to Taylor Lorenz?
I saw your encounter with her recently. You know, I kind of like Taylor at this point. I know that you've had a big beef with her. I made fun of her when she was going through her whole shtick maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where her entire beat at the New York Times seemed to be that she was getting trolled on the internet, and then she was going to make these grand inferences based on that, and then demand like certain political interventions or policy interventions, seemingly mostly to help her or other besieged journalists. I thought that was really kind of self-involved and myopic. But yes, I did. I had a big. We had a meeting of the minds at the Substack bureau that they set up at the Democratic Convention in August of 2024 in Chicago. So I think we put our beefs aside, and I think we're on good terms at this point. But I know that you don't like her Wired coverage of the influence.
I hate her.
network.
I think she's a disgusting, horrible
I did watch
influence.
that.
Yeah,
You
just
know
to be
what?
clear.
Come
But that's
to think
okay.
of it,
You can,
that's what I think gave me the idea to reach out to you, because I saw your discussion or saw part of it with Taylor. What did you come to any kind of conclusions from that, or is it still just
Why
as
I
fierce?
think Taylor's a bad faith actor in media.
Okay.
That's how I view it. Yeah. Did you ever read that Chorus article?
What article?
She wrote an article about Chorus, which was
I read it when it first came out. Like it was like maybe last summer, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was not true, and I think that, like in general, wait, where do you align yourself with politically? What do you say you are?
Hold that thought. I want to make sure I don't forget this.
Okay, don't.
You're
forget.
talking about these, video game focused pundits or commentators who then end up branching out into more political commentary, and then you're coming up at loggerheads with them. I recognize that same archetype and always did, because in my adolescence, I participated in message boards that were video game heavy, but like obviously just became general topic message boards. And inevitably there were lots of people who wanted to talk about politics. So that was kind of where I cut my teeth, so to say, and just kind of online debate with a political component.
Yeah.
But so I have like in my mind almost like an archetype of the type of guy that you would have come into conflict with, whose sort of genesis for engaging on the internet was about their strongly held convictions on like Xbox versus GameCube or something.
Yeah.
Initially, and then they kind of go through a maturation process and become more politically involved. And so it's just sort of funny because like this is not. I've never been involved in the streaming specific world, but in terms of how the political commentary world interfaces with the video game world, I do have a bit more of direct personal experience, just such that I kind of, in essence, sort of know what you're talking about vis-a-vis the Gamergate stuff, even if that wasn't really my bailiwick at the time.
It's also funny because depending on the world you come from, people's entire political outlook will be defined by the kind of the narrow subculture that they inhabit. So like I would describe these people as, they weren't really conservatives, but their entire political ideology could be summed up as anti-SJW. like social justice
Yeah, yeah,
warriors.
yeah.
So it'd be really funny because you could ask
Like Sargon of Akkad.
Yes, yeah. So you could ask somebody like, oh, who do you think is more privileged in society, like men or women? And it would be like, if you're a woman, you can get so much free stuff in World of Warcraft. So obviously women. Like that would be like the entirety of the thought. Regardless of what you think the
That's a
actual
decent
answer is.
privilege.
Yeah, regardless of what you think the actual answer is very funny because their entire like life is informed by the subculture that they come from. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of my own political views, okay, so people ask me this, and I promise I'm not trying to evade.
Okay.
But I do find that my partisan and or political convictions are becoming less and less strong as I age. So originally, I would have considered myself a quote progressive.
Okay.
Right? Teenage years, early 20s. You know, the first media outlet that I ever had a job at in any kind of way was The Nation magazine, which is like the left-wing journal. The main left-wing, you know, the most preeminent, if you want to put it that way, left-wing magazine in the United States. I did work at the Young Turks for a bit from 2017 to 2018, not because at that time I was any kind of doctrinaire progressive, but they liked how I had covered, you know, Hillary and stuff from a critical standpoint in 2016, I guess. But now, it is true that like, depending on what the political circumstances are on any given day or any given, you know, month, I've been called everything from, you know, fascist, Nazi, pro-Trump, to somebody who suffers from TDS, somebody who is like a left-wing zealot. And so like that, not that I would never ever tailor my own personal beliefs to kind of address anybody in the online sort of peanut gallery. I just find that if I'm driven by anything, if I could like go to the deepest recesses of my own mind and like try to locate what my political convictions are, they seem to mostly be aligned with a journalistic impulse at this point, in that I'm mostly interested in truth seeking. It's pompous, sure, but like that's what I'm most interested in doing for the most part. And that doesn't really lend itself to any kind of neat affiliation with any particular political tendency or definitely a partisan allegiance. And so that's really what I'm motivated most by. Not that not that I would ever obfuscate like if what my preference would be in a particular election. Like every presidential election cycle, I put out a post just describing what my reasoning is for voting or not voting for any particular candidate. I think that kind of transparency is pretty good.
Who just poured this last presidential election?
I did not vote for either Trump or Kamala.
Unbelievable.
Sorry.
Do you think Kamala would have been a better president than Trump at this point? Oh my goodness.
That's a counterfactual.
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
look. I mean,
Oh,
I
man.
think.
Oh boy.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say.
I don't think so, but-
I don't. Like, I mean, here's what I will say.
Uh-huh.
I don't think any Democrat, like substitute Trump right now for your generic Democrat, Kamala or not, somebody Obama, Biden-ish, probably would not be now at war with Iran. Because just, differences in the nature of the Democratic coalition versus the Republican coalition. In the Republican coalition, you have an outsized presence of the evangelical Christian pro-Israel segment. You have less of a baked-in, long-standing animosity toward Iran, whereas that's been like the default Republican posture toward Iran for many years, such that when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal, it was uniform among Republicans to oppose that. And
Sure.
Netanyahu opposed it as well.
Yeah.
Which is why there were congressional Republicans invited Netanyahu to come give a speech at a joint session of Congress to inveigh against the Iran nuclear deal. And so, I think there's a perfect storm now where, this is something that Trump was probably disposed to do. Netanyahu is pretty skillful at trying to make a case to an American counterpart, and he knew which buttons to press with Trump. And Trump also has
Probably
these,
wouldn't be tariffing the entire world. Probably wouldn't have been the mass deployment of ICE. Probably wouldn't have spent anywhere near as much. It feels like I'm trying to think of like what are the areas. Why is this such a hard choice for people?
It's not that it's a hard choice. It's just that I have a very peculiar calculation that I make in terms of whether I'm going to vote for a presidential candidate.
Sure.
And I acknowledge that this is not...
But I feel like there would never be in all of... I guess I'm not the best historian, but I'm trying to think of any election that could ever come up that would be as easy a choice as this. Like when you're thinking... Like if you were to ask me, would McCain have been a better president for the United States than Barack Obama? I guess I would have to go back at the time and analyze that. Like there are things where it's like maybe I could kind of see this, or would would Nikki Haley have been better than Joe Biden? And it's like, maybe I can kind of see this, but like, I can't think of two diametrically opposed outcomes as dramatic as Trump v. Kamala.
Possibly.
And then in any area where I would have hedged in 2024, where I would have been like, well, maybe he won't be as bad. On any area like that, it's so much worse.
Possibly. I'm just giving you what my personal and very peculiar and anomalous calculation is at this point.
Sure. I understand.
I'm not going to vote for a presidential candidate unless I can make a proactive case for them. Like, I'm not going to do the lesser of two evils routine. I'm not going to do like some counterfactual thing.
Well, then I guess the question would be like, what could ever be an election that you would support over this one? Like, I feel like the choice between these two candidates was like, I don't know if it would ever be as dramatically obvious which one would be better for the United States in almost every conceivable way.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to legitimize by way of my vote, which I know is not that significant in the grand scheme of things. It's just one of 310 million votes, right? But
more than that, because all of our illegals vote too.
I have a public platform of doing journalism stuff, right? So I try to maintain a consistent set of principles, and I just didn't feel that it was in any way warranted for me to
what do you think of the two?
Consecrate on any level a continuation of the Biden-Harris foreign policy, which I thought had been disastrous.
What were the things for Harris or for Biden-Harris that you thought were like beyond the pale? Like, I just can't endorse this
I thought the Ukraine policy was terrible. We had a debate about it in 2022. I thought
and then just to be clear on that,
I thought the Middle East policy was also terrible. Not necessarily terrible in the exact same way that Trump's could conceivably be, but still terrible in its own way, such that I wasn't going to proactively validate it by way of my vote to the degree that a vote validates a policy platform.
Is there any, historically, or at least in your lifetime though, is there a single president where there wouldn't be one thing that you could say, this is not okay? So like, of the 20 huge issues we might imagine a president has a position on, if we could imagine taxation, healthcare, the border, gay marriage culture, like if we can imagine 20 things, I feel like, is there ever going to be a president where there's not going to be at least like 1 to 5 of these boxes where you're like, no, like I wouldn't support it because this is a deal breaker? Like, I feel like
possibly. I'm not saying that my current mentality on my own personal voting choice is stuck in time forevermore. Like, maybe new information comes in at some point down the line where I make a different calculation, and I am more willing to accept like a lesser of two evils calculus, or I am more willing to
even on that phrase, like
proactively affirm that I support a particular candidate. But you know, I mean, I voted for Obama in 2008. I campaigned for him, actually. Like, I volunteered and registered voters.
Sure, but does that count? We were like 20.
Yeah, it was like 1920 at the time.
I supported Ron Paul for that election.
Oh, did you?
It's a long time ago. Yeah.
I kind of secondarily supported Ron Paul just because I liked just the critique that he was giving life to on some level, where he was on a debate stage with Rudy Giuliani and John McCain and Fred Thompson and Mike Huckabee, who were all just repeating basically the Bush line on Iraq and Afghanistan, and maybe even going after Iran. And there you have Ron Paul as this like voice in the wilderness who's just doing almost like a diametrically opposite take. Like, to me, there was something commendable about that. So I had a favorable view of Ron Paul in that cycle as well, and also into 2012, even though I hadn't voted for him. But that's my genesis. Look, I'm not. Even when I wrote in 2024 my kind of explanation of why I was abstaining from voting for any, I wrote in Fred Flintstone.
Okay.
I guess I was subconsciously channeling my premonitions that either Trump or Kamala could conceivably bring about like a dystopian post-apocalyptic hellscape akin to like the prehistoric age that the Flintstones lived in, except it wouldn't be as cheerful as like the ones that the Flintstones inhabited. But I feel like we could probabilistically
weigh those though, right?
We could.
Like, if I choose between like shooting you in the heart or cutting your forearm with like a knife, like you could get like an infection that becomes septic and you could die from like a cut. That's possible, but you would always opt for that over the getting shot in the heart with a gun, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not begrudging anybody who feels that they want to make a probabilistic assessment of that kind in terms of how they determine their vote. Fine, go ahead. Everybody's, there's a million different rationales that people can have in terms of how they choose to cast their own vote. This is just my very peculiar individual rationale that, yes, does play into my overriding journalistic mentality. So I'm not telling anybody to do what I do necessarily.
Okay.
I'm just saying that,
One of the things that's the most frustrating to me about that is that for anybody that is an actual center or even center left person, they'll give that answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know who never, ever, ever gives that answer is anybody who's even remotely in the Trump camp. So you'll never hear like a Dave
Probably
Smith
so,
person,
yes.
or you'll never hear Matt Taibbi or Shalom. You'll never hear any of these people like, well, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils, so I'm not going to go ahead and vote for Trump. All of them will just say like Trump is probably better, and they don't have that same. There's no limiter. Like if I go to a political, if I go to an academic conference and it's a presentation on sociology or something, and the speaker is like, the speaker starts off with like, we're going to present our findings on this thing, and we're doing our best to be apolitical. I know that person is left leaning because a right leaning person would never ever say that. So you get never
probably something to that.
Yeah, so it's a frustrating imbalance sometimes in the world where all these people who are ostensibly in the center, or like even sometimes like center left or further left, depending on their specialty or where they're presenting, are trying very hard to be apolitical. Meanwhile, anybody who's thrown in even remotely to Trump's lot is like shilling for him harder than he possibly. Yeah, it was frustrating. The asymmetry there. I guess, is
I've
difficult.
been going pretty hard after Dave Smith.
Yeah.
Because even at the time, like he invited me to come on this Twitter or X space thing with him around his logic for supporting Trump in 2024. And now he's kind of like revising history a bit, saying, oh yeah, sure, I did vote for Trump. He's minimizing the role that he played in 2024. It wasn't that just that he voted as a private citizen for Trump. It's that he participated in this whole propaganda onslaught.
And even worse, prospectively, he should have known better because historically he's talked about the negatives of Trump in the past. And also, this is a guy who is like a single issue fucking loser that shows up on shows to quote some ex-CIA guy about how horrible Iraq and Afghanistan is. That's his whole shtick, is talking about the ex-CIA guy said that in Iraq and Halliburton and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so you're not hawkish, you're against all the warmongering, but somehow you found yourself like openly deep-throating the guy who is now like launched 27 different attacks between the Middle East and Africa. Like, what the fuck, bro?
No,
like, how do you
gotcha.
fuck that up and have any semblance of decency to show your face anywhere online and talk about politics? Like, at that point, bro, go back to the unfunny comedian shit, because why would you even try to talk about politics at that point?
I'm still amazed I've never heard him utter a single funny joke, even though I guess that's his primary job, right? Or something?
Supposedly, yeah.
And then, of course, like, I would almost be willing to declare, I would be willing to lobby for legislation that declared a total and complete moratorium on any failed comedians transitioning into becoming political pundits in any way.
It's a lot of them.
I feel like that's a scourge.
It's a lot of them, and it is a scourge.
No, but
100%.
if you go look at
Case Constantine was a comedian guy, and he got bullied.
Oh, was he?
Yes, a lot of them
See, there you go.
a lot of them are comedians that got bullied once, and then their entire political life became being on the far right. Like for Joe Rogan, it was I think it was on CNN where they call ivermectin horse paste. That was it. Joe Rogan's brain melted at that point. He's like, that fucking video was too yellow, and I think they docked. And then he was gone at that point. It was like,
But if you go and listen to that debate that I had with him in, I think it was November of 2024, I just keep saying, hey, what about Trump's like very well-established position on Iran? Didn't Trump just come out and advocate for Israel to launch preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, like during the campaign, which he did, which would necessitate, if you know the first thing about the U.S.-Israeli relationship, an active U.S. role militarily in that operation. So Trump was outright calling for a joint U.S.-Israeli military strike on Iran. And Trump was also going around claiming that Iran was trying to assassinate him. He was appointing people who had already kind of set out a public argument for why a U.S. attack on Iran would be presumptively justified even before Trump came into office, such as his CIA director, Ratcliffe, who as a private citizen was going on Fox saying, look, they hacked Trump's campaign emails or something. I don't know if you recall that. And they're trying to assassinate him. Therefore, it should be foremost on our agenda to come into a next Republican administration and attack Iran. And
how are you so surprised by this? He tore up the JCPOA. When he was running in 2016, he said he was going to kill families of terrorists. He said he wants to leave people stationed in Syria so we can steal their oil. Like, he bombed a Syrian airfield. He's been involved in attacks in Yemen, in countries in Africa. Like he's got the most history to where when a thing happens, it's like it's not surprising at all. Like guy who, have you ever watched like sometimes like primaries where people are looking and they're making up all these theories about what's happening and we don't know if Biden or Bernie and blah, blah, blah. And then when like the primary votes finally happen and the guy who, wins who is ahead, when you look back at it, you're like, people were telling so many different stories about this primary, but the whole story was really just guy who's huge front runner, remained huge front runner, and then won the primary. And actually,
which happened with Biden, which happened with Hillary in 2016.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's actually not an interesting story at all. The interesting thing was all the crazy mental gymnastics to try to make it seem competitive along the way. And for Trump, I feel like it's exactly this. This is like the least surprising thing in the world is everything he's doing in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the thing with the Dave Smith and that whole crowd was not just that they were making this begrudging lesser of two evils calculation, right? It's that they were putting forth this totally fictitious image of what could be expected from a second Trump term. And it was sort of algorithmically boosted by this, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, like Avengers Squad take on Trump. Like if you're Ben Shapiro and you're supporting Trump on the grounds that you think Trump is going to enact a foreign policy that is akin to what you would have wanted in terms of your longtime foreign policy views, at least that's consistent. But in 2024, you had this phenomenon where like everybody was, just like outrageously audience captured and presenting Trump as though he was going to lead this anti-deep state revolution and he was going to restore free speech and he was going to end the wars. RFK Jr. went to that Madison Square Garden rally like a week before the election and said, vote for Trump, vote Republican this time, y'all. If you want to disband the warfare state, meaning Trump was going to somehow heroically stride into office and like abolish the military industrial complex. I mean, this was just berserk propaganda.
Yeah.
But it was so algorithmically incentivized, maybe because Elon was like tinkering with the algorithm on X in particular, but you saw it on YouTube, you saw it almost everywhere. And even a lot of people who I had previously had an affinity with, and maybe who would have joined with in contesting some of the more histrionic, overwrought, anti-Trump oppositional narratives of the first term, like some Russiagate stuff or like some of the fascism hysterics. I felt like I couldn't communicate with a lot of them anymore in 2024, and they were kind of like, they were overcorrecting for some of these, I think, still largely groundless or at least wildly exaggerated liberal anti-Trump narratives and becoming functionally pro-Trump in a way that I always said that I was never interested in doing. I was accused of wanting to do that. But in 2024, it was like, spitting into the wind. And I don't think there's really been a reckoning with it, although there should be, because like if you were giving voters or your followers an impression that something so radically different was going to be ushered in with Trump 2.0 than actually has come to pass, like shouldn't you, I mean, we're not talking about like decades and decades ago, we're talking about like less than a year and a half ago. Like shouldn't there be some obligation now to go back and reevaluate and maybe like understand how it is that this false image of Trump, like this mirage of him, was propagandistically disseminated to such a large audience of like these these sort of apolitical, maybe a little bit disproportionately male podcast listening people who like think that they're anti-establishment in some vague way and thought that Trump was just the obvious choice. Like that's what Dave Smith, among others, were promulgating in 2024, and that's what I think there should be some kind of reckoning.
Yeah, but there
isn't. I mean,
there's no reckoning because
memory hold things as quickly as possible and then barrel right along.
Yeah, there's no accountability for any of it.
Yeah.
I feel like the trajectory I took was, I felt like in 2016, like I would have been described as a very, very anti-Trump.
Oh, should I tweet that I'm on this right now?
No, it's fine. It'll go up on my YouTube later, so you're fine.
Well, I'm going to tweet maybe. I'm just going to let people know that like if they know how to find your live stream.
Sure, if you want to.
See, I'm tweeting live on stream now. Isn't that exciting?
Live on stream. I feel like in 2016, I was like a very anti-Trump person. And then from 2016, 2017 to 2021, I think that I made the liberal journey that so many people made to where you're like, okay, well, we're being super hard on Trump 2017, 2018, that you get the whole Russiagate stuff and the Mueller investigation. Thank you so much. And everything else. And then I feel like I made this journey of like, okay, maybe I'm like a little bit too deranged on Trump. I need to peel it back a little bit. And then after J6, and then in the ensuing year, I think as I start to learn more about government and actually engage more with civics, and then I look back, I feel like 2016 to 2020 was like about as bad or worse than any liberal Trump derangement syndrome. Like when you say the Russiagate stuff, like there is a public phone call with Giuliani where we can just go listen to it for 42 minutes, like begging Zelensky, or it's his aide that picks up, to like start a false investigation into Joe Biden's son. Sure. That
was a Ukraine iteration of like the Russiagate theme. That was a little bit that's a little bit different from what I'm referring to, which was like the Crossfire Hurricane investigation.
Sure, I understand that, but like, can you think in the equivalent? Like, you remember that, like, the real Russiagate conspiracy stuff, in my mind, was what people said about Hillary Clinton. You remember the claims that Hillary sold unilaterally all of our uranium, or 80% of America's uranium, to Russia. Like, that was a claim that was like a...
That was in the New York Times.
In the
that
2016...
was Ken Vogel in the New York Times, covering the Clinton Foundation, like,
sure, but this was
dealings.
Hardcore carried by right-wing people to say that, like,
Hillary
Hillary sold our uranium
research, this Oppo research book.
But, like, imagine if Hillary or any of these people had somebody of the caliber of fucking Manafort heading their campaigns, a guy who is not only convicted, but Trump eventually pardoned, or people like Stone who were directly coordinating with Russian hackers on released hacked materials from the DNC servers, from the DCCC, all the Podesta emails and everything, or were publicly making statements like, we'll reward whoever, or for the leaked emails or whatever, or that Trump Tower meeting that they completely fucking lied about, where that Russian lawyer lady came in and like, we were talking about shit, we wanted to get, like, I'm not saying, wait,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, like, this proves it, but I'm saying that if you collect all of those facts, it's already so exceptionally crazy that, like, I think most people, your priors on all of this would be so low that when so much stuff like that has happened, I think it's fair to wonder, like, what the fuck is going on here? This is so outside the norm. And I think there's way more evidence for any of that than, for instance, like, how long did we have to hear about Hunter Biden and Burisma and Chevron?
No, I agree with that, man. I think the Hunter Biden stuff was just like this ticky-tack stuff for the most part that, amazingly enough, although Republicans in Congress devoted
years and years, so many subpoenas.
For the 2 years that they had a majority under Biden, they basically spent it investigating Hunter Biden, but not even for anything that was going on contemporaneously. They were investigating stuff that went on when Joe Biden was vice president, like 9 years before.
Yeah,
they were saying that they were so concerned with like corruption involving Joe and Hunter's dealings with Ukraine, right? But we had like an active ongoing war at that point that the U.S. was supplying an enormous amount of weaponry for. And the best they could come up with was going back to 2014 and resuscitating stuff from the Obama administration.
Yeah. And it was about a Hunter who was not running for office and didn't have any presence in the White House anywhere near the way that, say, Jared Kushner did, or Witkoff did, right?
I mean, the Jared Kushner contrast is just outrageous.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I'm saying, the thing I'm saying is that, like, you've never in your life said this word, Huntergate, right? Nobody's referred to, like,
not, no.
Yeah, nobody thinks about that. But, like, there is way more shit related to Trump Russia stuff, which at this point I don't think there was like Trump and Putin were having a meeting of the minds, but I think that their campaign was looking for anything they could get, even if it came from an illegitimate source.
Yeah, but the impetus for the FBI investigation that was launched against Trump in the first term, vis-a-vis Russian interference or Russian collusion, was the following proposition: that Donald Trump had, quote, colluded or conspired with the Russian state to get himself installed as president and subvert the 2016 election, and then subvert like the American government essentially, so that it could be controlled Manchurian candidate style by Vladimir Putin. Like,
which I think that claim is true.
Okay, well, I disagree with that.
Okay.
You honestly think that?
Like,
you think Russia hacked the election machines in 2016?
No. That was never the claim. That's what Republicans said the claim was, and there were a few crazy.
I'll pull up a million clips.
You can pull up a million clips.
Adam Schiff saying they hacked the
machines.
As late as 2018, I swear to God, I'll pull up the polling right now. A supermajority of Democrats believed not just this lighter version of some kind of mild interference that maybe Trump benefited from, but that Russia explicitly hacked the voting machines in 2016 and fraudulently handed the election to Trump. You can find supermajorities of Democrats affirming that proposition.
Okay, so in that case, that claim was not only dumb, I'd never seen in my life anything substantiating that ever. So for anybody to believe that was incorrect for sure.
But that was Democratic conventional wisdom.
I would have to see that.
I'll show it to you right now. I'll show it right now.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Search for it. But when it comes to I'm 51% on this. I don't know if you've I don't know where you stand on this.
Can I search for it on here? Or?
Yeah, or give me a key to search for it. Like, I think like the laptop story, I think that was a Russian plant story. The Hunter Biden laptop thing, I don't think that Hunter Biden stumbled into a blind laptop repairman's fucking store who
Okay, here you
happened
go.
to.
So this is November 4th to 6th, 2018, YouGov poll. Question is, Russia tampered with vote tallies in order to get Donald Trump elected president. Do you find the following statements true or not true?
And it seems like 67%.
67.
No, that's not good. Okay.
Super majority.
Okay. That's a super majority.
That's enough to convict a president in the Senate.
It would, yeah. Well, unless they think
For
that,
impe-
unless they think they
for
can't
impeach.
convict him, yeah.
Yeah.
But
so that's the
okay.
kind
So
of
wait.
stuff-
So that part right there is
yeah.
bad. Okay. So you
good.
shouldn't think
So we
that.
agree.
But like all the other stuff, I think was largely true. There was bad coordination between people who were directly in Trump's committee. So Roger Stone and the Guccifer hacker guy. I think that's a big bad connection.
But Roger Stone was never proven, and believe me, if they could have, if
Was never proven to what?
could have proved, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Was never proven to have any privileged foreknowledge of anything to do with any of these hacked email releases or WikiLeaks or anything like that. It was just Roger Stone being a bullshitter.
Well, no. One, he had
and
DMs
trying to
with
trumpet his insider knowledge.
Wait, one, he had DMs with the Guccifer hacker on Twitter. They were exchanging DMs.
So what? I had DMs with that guy too, because I wanted to see if there was any information on it.
And if you would have been part of Trump's election campaign, I would be mad at you, but you're not. You're a journalist. It's a different thing, number one. But number two, part of I think 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 of the Roger Stone convictions were him not cooperating. Were him saying, I'm not going to testify or fuck you or whatever else.
That's true.
Yeah. And one of the things he said publicly was, I'm not going to fucking rat out Trump.
Yes.
And that was it. So I was like, well, I don't know what else would have been. And then Trump pardoned him on all of that.
Right. So, but it was a procedural crime. Like it didn't get to the actual crux of the theory.
Well, but the procedural crime was to avoid getting to the crux. Like,
Well,
if somebody says, like, did you see this guy lie about this thing? And I perjure myself and I lie about a thing, or I say, I'm not going to cooperate. And they say, well, we're going to hold you in contempt and prosecute you for that. It's like, well, they didn't answer that question. Well, why would he be lying about this thing? It's because he didn't want to answer that thing. And he even intimidated another witness. There was a second guy he intimidated because that was one of his other convictions for witness intimidation of another guy to not get him to say anything about Trump.
Or on the other hand, if you are the target of a very aggressive special counsel investigation, and you have a defense lawyer who is worth their salt, what they will invariably tell you is that you should say as little as you possibly can and not cooperate with these investigators because they're on a warpath to try to prosecute you.
You cannot cooperate, but that's different than perjuring yourself or witness intimidation, right? For instance, none of the
Mike Flynn ended up pleading guilty
lied
to
to
a perjury.
the FBI.
But it was over.
It was not. It was over a direct contact with the Russian before the election that he should have been forthcoming about. He lied about it.
But it was over. It was basic, like the gravamen of that lie, so called, was basically mixing up a date within the span of a week or two. It was about his communications with the Russian ambassador.
Yes, which is the thing that he lied to the FBI about, that he was so compromised that the, I think it was the State Department forced the DOJ to take action on it because they didn't even want him as part of the administration because they felt like that was a compromising lie. Because now if somebody knows that he's lied about that thing to the DOJ and FBI, now he could potentially be compromised. And this guy, he was like the national security advisor or whatever. Like, that's a pretty big position to fuck that up on. And it's about Russian people, which is already, there's so much crazy shit about this. And if we look at Michael Flynn's Twitter today, this guy is deeply yeah, exactly. So it's like, what the fuck? Yeah.
No, but that communication it was with Sergei Kislyak, right? He was the Russian ambassador. It was during the transition. So after Trump wins the election, hasn't come into office yet. It was Flynn speaking on the phone with the Russian ambassador saying, before you retaliate against these sanctions that Obama has imposed for so-called interference, remember Obama closed down, like in the waning days of his administration, this Russian sort of diplomatic outpost in Maryland, and he imposed some sanctions. Flynn said, before you retaliate in kind, wait till we get back in, wait till our administration comes in, and then we'll revisit it. Like, it was pretty run-of-the-mill diplomatic communication that got depicted in the most inflammatory possible light because there was already this political narrative going on that any potential communication whatsoever between anybody affiliated with Trump and anybody affiliated with Russia was hugely damning and therefore served as evidence for this overarching collusion narrative.
I understand that. But you have unprecedented levels of obstruction into this investigation with Trump later on. And you've got so many people, like, there is no world where the Democrats would have survived having a Manafort-like person anywhere in your orbit, let alone your chief campaign manager guy. that
Democrats have got plenty of shady consultants. And
name
campaign
one
managers.
person close to Manafort's prestige and Trump's because he was the head of the
He was a campaign chairman
manager
for a bit. Yeah, he ran like the delegate operation at the convention.
He was I think he was the manager of the entire campain. Manafort was the top position.
Yeah, he was for a time.
Illegally helping. Was it Yanukovych or was it beforehand? And undeclared, getting like tons of money to do these things, which was again for a Russian-backed candidate in Ukraine, undeclared, convicted, but so much money that came from this conviction that Mueller literally paid for
from 10 years prior.
Wait, Hunter Biden who's not in office, who's not affiliated with any politician. Hunter Biden was 10 years prior, and there wasn't even anything bad about him that turned up. The only thing we even knew about Hunter Biden was because of the Russian email hacks that got leaked from the big guy.
I'm not arguing the Republican position on Hunter Biden.
Sure, I'm just saying that nobody like Manafort. Like if I ask you, who's one Democrat that's even remotely close to that weird being in a reasonable position? I'm sure we could find like a think tank donor or like Soros, like whatever kind of person. But in terms of like what Manafort was,
look. Okay, so the most
or like the Trump Tower meeting. You were going to say something like that. That was a bad meeting.
The Trump Tower meeting.
They lied about it.
Amounted to anything
because they didn't have anything to turn over. But they lied about it.
I interviewed the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, who organized that Trump Tower meeting. He was a British music promoter. It was a nothing. I mean, there was no actual noteworthy information that was ever exchanged.
But the goal
it was just this like freelancing Russian lawyer who thought that maybe he could get Don Jr. and Jared Kushner's attention, and they basically just ended the meeting within 10 minutes, and then nothing really ever came of it.
But nothing did. But they took the meeting looking for something from a foreign national that they lied about.
I mean, yeah, fine.
And then what does Trump do when he gets into office? The only reason we have Mueller is because he immediately fires...
Who died today, R.I.P.
RIP. He fires Comey because he doesn't like the fact that Comey's not stopping the investigation. He's bullying Jeff Sessions every day on Twitter because Sessions recused himself. I'm just saying, it's the guiltiest shit in the universe. And then we get the call to fucking Ukraine and everything going on here. I'm just saying it's a lot of shit where it's like, there's so much more there that to dismiss all of it as Russiagate because a lot of people didn't like the fact that they thought that the voting machines were rigged or whatever, which is not a good claim, but that's nowhere near the level of delusion that conservatives have been on for the past 10 years.
Here's my larger point about Russiagate, okay? I'm going to connect it to today's most salient issues.
Okay.
It's that my issue is that there was always an overabundance of material, from my perspective, to actually formulate a rational critique of Trump based on. So, for instance, he ran in 2016 talking about how he could uniquely self-fund his campaign, right? He couldn't be bought by any of the donors or whomever, unlike the little puppet Marco, he would call him, or unlike Jeb Bush or whomever. And then immediately after he basically gets the nomination, he starts courting the same Republican donor class that he said he was going to be uniquely equipped to resist the temptations of, right, or not be subordinated to. And then he governed basically as a Republican donor class president. Like his main legislative accomplishment in the first term was just the tax reform bill that Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or name your other standard Republican would have essentially done.
Correct.
And then and then he also implemented a foreign policy that escalated virtually every conflict that he inherited. For somehow, the highest number of Afghan casualties in the entire war was in 2019 when he escalated the air war. You barely heard any coverage of that. And he tried to do regime change in Venezuela. It was a little bit more of a ramshackle attempt in the first term, but then they got it together in the second term.
Was it Venezuela or was that Bolivia? Where they brought in the Guido guy, they brought him in as like...
Guido was Venezuela.
Yeah, okay, because they tried to do it there, because they brought him into the U.S. to legitimize him, and they wanted to send a bunch of aid trucks for him or whatever.
The Trump State Department, no, I think that was the Bolivia thing with the contested election with Morales was in Biden's term. And, regime change in Venezuela, claiming he's going to withdraw troops from Syria, but then leaving them to keep the oil, he says. And on and on and on. Like, basically... I always thought that the Democrats were so hysterically and like single-mindedly focused on what I would have argued were primarily, maybe not 100% exclusively in every possible respect, but primarily this kind of confected narrative that they wanted to use to go after Trump that also had a lot of negative political ramifications in that it created sort of an incentive structure where in order for Trump to prove that he wasn't in hock to Russia, what could he do? Take bellicose action against Russia, and he did. He bombed Russia's chief client state, or several of Russia's client states, meaning Assad, He tried to overthrow their chief client state in the Western Hemisphere, Venezuela. He threw out arms control schemes bilaterally between the United States and Russia. So the Open Skies Treaty, the INF Treaty, so the Intermediate Range Missile Treaty. And now, he's continuing that even further, actually. People, I guess, still maybe implicitly think that he's sort of in hock to Russia, but as of February, there's the New START Treaty is no longer operative, so there's no longer any mutual arms control regimen governing the nuclear arsenals of the United States and Russia for the first time since the early 1970s, when it was the Soviet Union. So it's stuff like that I thought the Democrats would kind of almost made a special point to strategically never really focus on, maybe in part because it would implicate them to some degree, implicate the bipartisan consensus to some degree. Instead, they would screech over and over again about Russia, racism, January 6th, democracy on the line, etc., and not a lot of
okay, just real quick. I understand your point.
That's now transferring over to the fixation on Epstein, which has a lot of similarities with the Russiagate story.
So I disagree. I think the Epstein fixation is a 100% conservative-driven phenomenon, and I would defend that to my death because they are obsessed.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Can
I get some more water, by the way?
No.
Okay.
No, I'll grab you some in a second. I'll leave you with this thought. Because the thing is, of all the things you just mentioned, Russiagate, January 6th, democracy, and whatever the other thing was, all of those things in my mind, you can argue that maybe there was some strategic error committed or some unforced error committed by focusing on these issues. Every single one of these is more important in my mind, however unimportant you might think they are, than every single issue that Republicans hyperfixated on, like whether or not Leah Thomas should have been racing as an NCAA athlete, or whether or not in COVID, the states were trying to do mandatory vaccines and masks and rule us forever with infinite government shutdowns because they hated religious people, or whatever weird thing they fixated on, or the infinite obsession with Hunter Biden and his cock and having pictures of it. So my question is, here's what I don't understand, okay, is why is it that we can be critical of the Democrats and say, well, maybe they kind of flubbed this thing, an issue which, by the way, if that would have existed on the equal side, on the Democratic side, we would still be talking about it today, okay? But we can say that maybe the Democrats made an error there. Why is it the Republicans made 50 million obsessively weird errors and none of it sticks to them, none of it matters?
Good question.
Wait, think about that, and you can talk about it and I'll listen. Okay. Go, I'm listening.
So remember when Kamala Harris gave her kind of grand finale speech in 2024 at the Ellipse in Washington?
Yeah.
And it was about democracy, right? It was about how Trump is this existential threat to democracy.
He is, yeah.
Okay, you can think that.
I know that.
But
we've got the same back that we're looking at right now.
Notice, so we're now in March, and we're now what is it? 14 months into the second Trump administration. Democracy is still roughly intact, meaning elections haven't been abolished.
That. Okay.
And another thing that tangibly is going on and observably is going on right now is that there's a giant war in the Middle East. I don't remember Kamala Harris ever making it a point to inform voters as best she could and as best she could kind of politically frame things that if you vote for Trump, you're potentially voting for a giant conflagration in the Middle East.
Hold on, wait. Am I crazy? Am I making this up? Did Kamala not explicitly say that Trump is going to send your children to die in Iran? Am I making this up? Didn't she? Didn't she?
Maybe she did. I might not be remembering. Pull it up. She didn't give a speech at the Ellipse about it. She didn't make it a major emphasis.
She might not have said it at the.
She didn't make it a major emphasis because I followed the campaign pretty closely.
I'm trying to remember what she
said. You want
said.
a nicotine gum?
No, I'm good. I hate nicotine.
You're all into stimulants now, but you don't like nicotine. I shouldn't get you hooked, actually.
I just like amphetamine. It's not all stimulants, okay?
I guarantee you'll enjoy this.
Well, then I don't want to do it because I'll get addicted to it. Fuck, I'm trying to remember. I'm almost positive that Kamala had made some statements on...
I don't think she did. I mean, she came out on her, I think it was her 60 Minutes interview, and she was asked, what is the greatest threat to the United States? And she said Iran.
Which, well, I mean, that can be true, but that doesn't necessitate a boots on the ground, bombing response as well, right? So, for instance, Biden was supportive of Israel, but not in the same way that Trump is supportive of Israel.
Differently.
Right?
I mean, Biden actually was a long-time ideological Zionist. I mean, he would actually come out and say this pretty frequently.
Sure. Well, every old person in the U.S. has to be.
Trump couldn't really even define what Zionism is. It's more just that in terms of his whole transactional approach to conducting politics, the pro-Israel, the hardline pro-Israel element was something that he could easily kind of subsume into his support base and then adopt a lot of their views, and there was probably some pre-existing views around his just like being in New York, kind of Palm Beach circles where it's like presumptively very pro-Israel. But he was different than Biden in that, like, so.
But the first big
But when
Iranian.
you find Kamala warning about Trump invading or sending
I feel
troops
like
to,
somebody should find it. I don't have the link right now.
I
I think
don't
it was
think
in one
she
of the
did.
debates.
I mean,
it might have been a more general statement about being bullied by world leaders and being pulled into conflict. But I would have to
I
check.
don't think she
but
ever made a point to actually warn specifically about Trump running the risk of getting us mired in another protracted conflict in the Middle East with boots on the ground and economic turmoil, which is what's going on right now. Like nothing.
But I mean, like Trump literally.
Don't you think? I mean, would you agree with this? Nothing in the Democrats' messaging, by and large. I mean, maybe there's some quote that I don't fully remember off the top of my head right now, but like by and large, generally speaking, nothing that the Democrats were saying about Trump in 2024, or even the preceding 3 years, would have given a preview of one of these kinds of eventualities with Trump.
Well, but I don't think that would have been a good messaging point because people just
Why
didn't,
not?
because people don't care much
The
about
war is hugely unpopular.
the thing of highest salience at that point was inflation. It was the thing that the affordability stuff. Like I think because a lot of lefties will argue this when it comes to the Palestinian position. I think when we looked up, this might have just been Israel-Palestine, but like this issue is like 6% of voters thought that this is one of the most important things. I think at the time people were obsessed with the affordability thing, especially because of all the inflation, and then the Republican huge talking point had to do with the border, which is controlling the amount of illegal people that were coming in.
I don't know. I think if you had told people, look, like if you had a window into the future, and you could tell people that, look, everybody, if you vote for Trump, here's what you're going to get. On February 28th, 2026, he's going to, in the middle of the night, just start a gigantic cataclysm in the Middle East.
Yeah, but couldn't they have just said, no, we're not?
No, what I'm saying...
And he said, like, why did the Abraham Accord? So what are you saying here? I'm the president of no new wars. So what are you saying here?
I'm just saying this was not something the Democrats ever felt like it was prudent to ever emphasize. And that just gets to this larger...
Like, look at how many people didn't believe the project.
The,
what about the Project 2025 stuff? Like, I was saying, like, I don't think you should message on this Project 2025 stuff because Americans just don't care about policy. But, like, they denied that the whole time and nobody seemed to care that that's, like, the playbook that they're following now that they're in office. And Trump has even said it, like, oh, actually, I like this now. Even before he was like, oh, I've never heard of this. I have no idea. So I mean, like, I just don't think Americans...
My point is that the thrust of the Democrats' messaging never would have prepared the public to anticipate something like what's going on now vis-a-vis Iran. I think that speaks to the larger skewing of Democratic priorities in the Trump era in terms of what they emphasize and what they don't, where on the one hand, they're pretty content, it seems, to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks in terms of Trump. But despite this huge cacophony of anti-Trump messaging that they would constantly experiment with, nobody ever thought that maybe it might be sensible to warn about a giant war in the Middle East. I was warning about it. I was warning about Trump's Iran position in particular. Nobody would really listen.
But I don't know how you could bring that. I don't even know how you would be able to argue that point with the guy who's just going to point to the fact that he did the Abraham Accords. He's the one that...
You could point to his record in the first term, which was geared toward regime change in Iran. You could point that he himself says that in June of 2019 he was minutes away from bombing Iran.
Sure, but he didn't, right? So he could just say I didn't do it, right?
No, but you could project outward to the future and make
for the average American mind. You can barely project out to 2 weeks from now, let alone like related to foreign policy.
I mean, if you're willing to deal enough in abstraction that you could say that voting for Trump is the end of democracy, whatever that means exactly. But
well, like on January 6th, you're trying to coup the government. I think that's pretty visceral. We have videos of it.
But you're not willing to project out in the future around a potential cataclysmic military conflict. That just shows what you're prioritizing in terms of your messaging. Not an aversion to something being too abstract for voters to understand.
I think that January 6th is way more cataclysmic than whatever's happening in Iran right now.
Really?
Absolutely, 100%. Huh. You had a president for the first time that I'm aware of in U.S. history try to circumvent the peaceful, or he did circumvent the peaceful transfer of power. It was a violent transfer of power. And then you have Iran. How many?
What's the death count in Iran versus January 6th at this point?
I don't know. What was the death count in the Revolutionary War compared to the death count of fucking COVID? What does that have to do with anything?
I'm not saying
what does the death count have to do with anything?
Well, you're saying in terms of what's more cataclysmic or destructive or lamentable. I do think that the death count is one metric we can use. It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. That's
the death
one
count. When I'm thinking of
use.
harm, I would never use the death count as the harm to American democracy. I think I would look at what was the president doing.
Just harm in general.
I'm not talking about harm in general. I'm talking about specific harm to democracy.
Oh,
I
to
think
democracy,
the U.S.
okay.
president trying to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power with a whole ass scheme that's completely public, I think is crazy to me.
Well, I mean, I do think that a protracted war being launched does tend to go hand in hand with, for example, the abridgment of civil liberties, with more government surveillance, with more, less tolerance for freedom of speech.
I agree, but Bush didn't try to prevent the peaceful. Bush didn't try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Like nobody tried to coup the government after the Iraq and Afghanistan war, except for Trump.
I acknowledge that Bush did not do what Trump did on January 6th. No argument there. I'm just saying, like, there are reasons to be worried. If you're worried about democracy, broadly construed, just in terms of kind of liberal democratic norms and
I can agree with you there, but that's way more abstract than the president is trying to coup the government, is trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Like in an abstract way, more Middle East.
Do you even have a problem with the Iran thing going on right now? Or are you basically in favor of it or opposed to it, or what's your view?
There's like a world where I could be okay with it, but not under this administration and not with the people leading it who are leading it right now. I'm not a fan of the.
So if it was Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg doing it right now, you'd be more inclined.
I would have to know what the purpose or what their vision is or what exactly is going on.
Okay.
I guess right now in my mind, this is exclusively like an Israeli project that Trump is along for the ride on because he's an idiot. Is how I view it.
Okay.
I don't think Trump is conferred with.
What are some hypothetical circumstances where you can imagine yourself supporting something along these lines?
Hypothetical circumstances would be a world where Israel is still more constrained by a Democratic president rather than a Republican one, and then a world where, say that same, when the Ayatollah is killing protesters and the thousands or tens of thousands, depending on what numbers you believe, if that event is happening and there's some other group of people in Iran that seem like they could take over the government and there could be something, I don't know, obviously these types of regime changes could be messy. We have the whole Iraq thing. I don't know if I would, but at that point I would at least have to think about it, as opposed to right now, I don't know if you know, I don't know if anybody knows why the United States is involved with Iran. It feels like we've gotten 3 different reasons stated, and I don't know what we're actually doing there, what the mission success is. Or
Well, I'm much more instinctively averse to it just on principle, I guess, regardless of who would be president, meaning forcible imposition of regime change in Iran by the United States. That would be more my starting point in terms of analyzing this, whether or not it's Donald Trump. Obviously, with Trump at the helm, you have a much sort of crazier situation.
Sure,
where
I agree with you. That would be but I'm saying there are things that could make me consider it, right? If Iran killed 10 million people under Kamala Harris, you'd be like, okay, well, fuck, maybe we should do something, right? I'm saying I would at least think about it. But under Trump, I don't think Trump has a mind or a vision for the Middle East. And whatever is happening right now is probably exclusively serving the interests of Israel, which I don't know necessarily benefits everybody in the region or even long-term U.S. interests in the region.
And aren't you a pro-Israel guy? What would be your problem if it were serving the interests of Israel?
Because the United States should work with Israel because oftentimes our interests are aligned. And as long as our interests are aligned, I think they're a valuable partner to work with. I think that because of the style of government, because of the background of their people, I think that we generally align more on things. But when those things fall out of alignment, well, fuck Israel. Then we need to bring them back into alignment. So there are things that Israel has done, I think, recently, their whole handling of the Palestinian problem has always been a huge fuck to everybody in this fucking region. But the stuff related to Iran, that's a regime that Israel really, really, really wants to see gone. Now, to be fair, a lot of our friendly Arab leaders, like in Saudi Arabia and stuff, they also kind of want to see them gone too. But I think that Israel would be happy to have Iran gone and then sever ties with the United States and then kind of run this region as a regional power independent actor, because who the fuck is going to fight with Israel in that entire region with Iran gone? And then the U.S. just has to engage with them like a neutral third party, as opposed to right now where we're kind of still sort of running shit. I don't think,
I mean, I think the decisive role of Israel in this war has been overstated for a variety of different reasons. I'm not saying that they're irrelevant. Obviously, they're waging the war in concert with the United States at the moment. I just think that the attempt to ascribe singular responsibility to Israel is being done for a variety of kind of questionable political reasons or even self-absolving reasons on the part of people like a Dave Smith or a Tucker, who now want to shift blame entirely onto Israel because they can't grapple with how they peddled this radical misconception of Trump in 2024, right?
Well, no, I understand. Let me be clear when I say this, okay? If I were to tell you, okay, that
I think this is part of what.
Trump, wait, real quick. If I'm at home, okay, and I were to tell you that while I was at home, if I were to tell you my 30-year-old son stabbed and killed his.
Is he in the next room?
30-year-old girlfriend. Yes, stay there in the next room. My 30-year-old son stabs and kills my 30-year-old girlfriend. Right? I'm imagining that you would say that was his fault, right? He stabbed his girlfriend and killed her. You're not going to blame me for that, right?
Sure. I mean,
right? But let's say that I tell you. But let's say that I tell you my 5-year-old son stabbed and killed his friend while he was at my house. You probably blame me for that. But I mean, he did it. right? I'm viewing Israel as like the child. I think that Israel has its own goals and desires. So when I say Israel is pushing and it's because of them, what I'm saying is that the U.S. government, for Trump, they don't have the responsibility, the vision, the wherewithal to actually issue any sort of guidance or to compel Israel to act in a certain way. That Israel's always wanted to do this. Under Biden, they would have gladly done a regime change operation in Iran, but the U.S. would have said, we're not doing that right now. You guys are fucking crazy. But under Trump, they will. So when I'm saying I'm blaming Israel, I'm still blaming the Trump admin. I'm not shifting all those to Israel because they should be on the U.S. It's like, well, hold on, let's think about like what's going on here. But the current administration doesn't, is what I'm...
Yeah, I guess, I've just been trying to make the argument that Trump is more the primary agent of responsibility here than I think a lot of people, especially on the internet, have been willing to accept. Because what did Trump come barreling into office for his second term proclaiming? Basically that he was on this globe-spanning mission of conquest.
No.
Yes?
He came in as the president of No New Wars.
Well, after he got elected, right? After he got elected,
Then he started to
starts
change,
rambling
sure.
about wanting to seize Greenland.
And building more ships and everything. That's true,
He gives his inaugural address, which I don't think anybody picked up on at the time other than me, but I happened to notice and thought it was a little bit curious that his speechwriters decided to write him lines heralding William McKinley as his model for the second term. And then he issued an executive order basically at the day he came into office, touting William McKinley basically as the president who he wanted to emulate. And if you go and read about William McKinley, that was the first president who inaugurated these overseas conquest missions on which he sent U.S. troops on overseas expeditions to conquer foreign lands that most Americans never heard of, like the Philippines or Guam. Or Cuba, more people would have heard of Cuba, but like the Philippines, like nobody had any. Guam, like was at the top of the mind for everybody in 1900 in the United States, probably not. But for whatever reason, oddly enough, that's what Trump and his speechwriters thought was the theme that they should most emphasize in his inaugural address, which is like, what gets like recorded for history in terms of laying out the agenda for a president when they come in for their term. And then he starts rambling about wanting to take over the Panama Canal. He starts talking about wanting to take over Canada. People dismiss it as a joke. At a certain point, it's not particularly funny. Obviously, that's less practically.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. Here's a question. This is what I want you to deal with. Okay? Right, if Israel was saying, we're not doing regime change in Iran, we need to chill about this, United States of America, the U.S. would not be bombing Iran.
I'm just not sure what that would look like because it's so integral into Israeli state policy and political culture at this point to take some kind of decisive action against Iran to overthrow that government that I'm not even really understanding how we can entertain the hypothetical and still be talking about Israel, right? Because then we're talking about almost something else.
Let's assume that Netanyahu was losing domestic popularity because the war was raging on too long in the Gaza Strip and the people didn't have the appetite for it. Or so, we can think of a million ways that it could have gotten there. But if Israel would have said, okay, maybe a full-on attack against Iran, maybe not good, I don't think without them pushing, I don't know if Trump is on board with this.
Trump seems to believe that Iran was trying to assassinate him. And therefore, he's entitled to take vengeance on Iran. When they killed the supreme leader, he told Jonathan Karl of ABC, I got to him before he got to me. Meaning it's almost like this schoolyard bully thing almost in his mind. Where
yeah, but I think Trump says retarded shit. I don't know if that's indicative into his state of mind for starting a war.
I think it's indicative of like one of the
because they could have just assassinated him and just been done with it. No, they killed Soleimani. Trump seems like the kind of crazy dude who would assassinate a fucking Iranian.
They killed Soleimani, and then that resulted in blowback where there might have been attempts. We don't know how serious they were, but like let's just.
Well, it was really serious because Iran, I think, blew up one of their own civilian airliners on accident after when they tried to retaliate.
I'm just saying. I think that look, I'm not denying that the role of Israel was important in kind of maybe accelerating things or crystallizing it, and Netanyahu in particular knows how to cater a case to an American president because he basically grew up in Philadelphia, and like he just is very well schooled in knowing how to make an argument that is in furtherance of Israel's interest to an American president. Maybe Trump is a little bit more impressionable and persuadable than a Biden would have been.
Impressionable, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that nonetheless, this Iran excursion, as Trump calls it, fits very neatly into this larger governing paradigm that Trump came into office advocating and enacting and implementing, which is that he's on like this global conquest mission. He now says he's going to be taking Cuba. He has declared himself the ruler of Venezuela, not just that he abducted the president and bombed Venezuela, but that he's the ultimate governing authority. in Venezuela such that he has veto power
Sure.
over Venezuela's governance. Same
Yeah.
with Gaza. I mean, Trump declares himself the ultimate governing authority.
They put him.
in
He made that
Gaza.
peace board, right?
Yeah. He's
You know
like-
who wouldn't have done this? Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It would have been, it would have been
Probably
more,
right.
it
You think
would have
Kamala would have put herself on the head of the peace board
been,
for
probably
governor?
not. Probably not. It would have been much more conventional. It would have been much. It would have been a continuation of Biden, pretty much. So I just think that I think at the very least that interpretation of why Trump has started this war with Iran is worth giving a little bit more credence than I see as being commonplace at all in the popular discussion of this, rather than focusing so monomaniacally on Israel as though like it's the prime mover and its influence is insurmountable and you can never defy Israel. Like they're always going to be calling the shots.
No,
and they're
this is
almost
cringe. I don't
puppeteering
believe
Trump.
the
A
AIPAC
lot of people
obsessive
believe
stuff.
that stuff.
I understand, and all of that is stupid as fuck. Or the weird anti-Semitic stuff, or the Zog stuff. Zionist-owned government. I agree that all those talkers are stupid as fuck.
Okay.
But I do think right now, I think Israel can do basically whatever it wants because I think Trump is just a weak man with no vision for the region. And if he sees something might serve his interests and Israel can sell it to him, I think he'll just go along with it instantly.
What do you think of like Russiagate levels of Democrats thinking right now that Trump launched the war for something to do with Epstein? Whether it was just to deflect politically from the attention on the Epstein files, or because maybe he's compromised by Israel and they've got blackmail on him.
When I look at the-
or,
in my
there's
mind-
variations of this theme, but like if you look at this poll that was done a week or two ago, it's you got super majorities similar to the poll I just showed you of Democrats affirming one way or another that Epstein is like a causal factor in why the war was launched.
Epstein is, in my mind, is just kind of like right now, it's the epitome of populist brain rot. It's just like the people have been really obsessed for a long time with the idea of like a global elite pedophile ring that involves all the head leaders of the world who are controlling everything behind the scenes. And that's just an idea that a lot of populist-leaning people, which is a lot of people now, are really attracted to. And the reason why I put the onus on the Trump admin for this is because I don't think anybody's done more to undermine the institution of government and the institution of the media and the institution of everything in our information landscape than the conservatives. Like you've got Bongino on fucking, what was it, Tim Pool or Joe Rogan, who's like, I got a friend of the CIA and he's seen all the Epstein shit and he knows it's
I think
fucked.
that was on his own Dopey Brumble.
Was
podcast.
it on his own?
Yeah,
I thought he was talking another. It might have been on his own.
Maybe,
You've got
yeah.
like Pam Bondi, who's here's the fucking part one. The fucking Epstein files. Like I think the conservatives ham this up hardcore, but they ham up
I agree.
every conspiracy theory between. Like, how can you look at? Fuck. Wait. I love you, vegan gains. We don't want to do that right now. Trust me.
What was that?
Just another guy who wanted to argue stuff, but it's not worth it right now.
Vegan gains. Okay.
Yeah. The Epstein
I have
stuff.
to take some workout tips from him.
The Epstein stuff, like in my mind, is like looking at like how do you not draw a line directly from QAnon and Pizzagate to like the Epstein
can't.
stuff?
You can't.
Like, yeah, that's why I said I feel like it's a Republican.
But you
yeah.
said it's like 100% a right wing.
I'm sorry, I meant like instigated. Like absent them, I don't think that the
where
Democratic
you're wrong.
base
Here's
would
where you're
have.
wrong.
Like I don't think a populist type like Bernie Sanders or even AOC are pushing on the Epstein stuff anywhere near as the populist types on the right. But I do think that
With a
populists on
little
the
bit
left find it
different intensity,
attractive.
But I mean, however intense any particular Democrat is pushing it right now, it's become such a dominant narrative that you
It has,
have
yeah.
like the vast majority of Democratic voters
I agree.
just saying that Trump went to war with Iran over Epstein.
Yeah.
So that's notable, right?
Not
and like
good.
it's all, and then like there have been periods, maybe not quite so much in the past few weeks after the war started, but like if you tune into MSNBC or MS Now or like any kind of more Democratic leaning media outlet, it's like Epstein 24/7.
Sure.
Or had been,
Yeah, but who brought this up to the salience of level that it's at now?
Well,
Republicans,
it's-
when they came in, obsessed over this. Pam
No, I
Bondi and the
gotcha.
Biden, they obsessed over it. I found new documents in the Southern District of New York that I'm going to bring all of them. They obsessed over this. So, yeah, of course, now that they obsessed over it, now like, oh, fuck, don't look at it. And this is populist brain rot 101. All of your elite leaders that you thought were conspiring against you actually were part of a huge child rape pedophile ring. There's like everybody, all the populist people want this story.
There's always been an undercurrent of people who did believe that. I mean, like we're all fundamentally ruled by this cabal of elite pedophiles.
But the Republicans are the ones that
now it's
elevated
become,
this.
But now it's become so incredibly mainstream.
I agree, yeah. But the
So
Republicans
it's a
are the
different
ones
order.
that brought this up here so much, right?
Well,
if I run around the house and I sprinkle oil on everything, I set it on fire, we both burn. But like the guy who is setting the house on fire probably has a little bit more responsibility. But I agree, it's a huge problem on the Democratic side too. I don't like talking about it. I hate it when people bring it up all the time.
Oh,
yeah.
really? Okay. But
Yeah.
so, I mean,
or when I say I don't like talking about it, what I mean is that like it's a brain rot topic. Most people's thoughts on it are fucking retarded, and most people that think that the Epstein thing is important hate both sides equally anyway. So it doesn't even serve my political narrative that which I want to support the Democrats more than the Republicans, and I don't think there are as much of an element of truth of most of the claims people make about it.
I think it's a fascinating narrative. I can't get enough of it, just from the standpoint of like chronicling the mass hysteria or the moral panic, as I would see, as I would regard it, and how it's become so pervasive in terms of the beliefs that it engenders and how it's internationalized. Like, it's not just the United States. I mean, this has like been the number 1 political scandal or controversy in, France, Norway, Slovakia, United Arab Emirates for a time, Britain, obviously. So I just think of it's like endlessly fascinating from that perspective, and just how people have so many fictional beliefs or myths that they've just absorbed unwittingly and assume must be true about it, that I can't get enough of, just in terms of like documenting it and almost theorizing what went on here. But like in terms of the right-wing valence of it, yes. What makes the issue so resonant, and why people, I guess, maybe are kind of badgering you to talk about it, is because of the ideological synergy of it. Meaning, it's not limited to one or the other. It doesn't neatly kind of...
it very neatly encapsulates everybody with
right versus left.
75 IQ or lower is what it neatly tracks with.
But go back to in 2018, right? So there was a series of articles in the Miami Herald by this Julie K. Brown journalist. I don't know if you're familiar with her, if you've seen her, but like she's still considered one of the preeminent Epstein expert journos in the country.
Okay.
She puts out this series of articles in November of 2018 that breathes new life into the Epstein saga, right? And it causes a huge controversy politically because she frames it as Trump's labor secretary, Alex Acosta, gave a sweetheart deal to this sex offender, blah, 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 blah. And Julie Brown has said that she was pursuing this story because she was looking for an angle that she could, for an article, for like a avenue of inquiry that she could pursue that was anti-Trump, that she could peg to Trump. And she found the perfect news peg. Trump's labor secretary, Alex Acosta, was in fact the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida when Epstein was prosecuted and had to plead guilty to pursue into a federal non-prosecution agreement in 2008. And so she kind of revived this, right? And she also tied in with Me Too. She credits Me Too as catalyzing this renewed interest in the Epstein story circa 2018. Then the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, they see this article and like the huge political uproar that it engenders, and think, okay, maybe we need to think about maybe federally re-prosecuting this guy. They're already collaborating with one of the victim's lawyers, Bradley Edwards. But in some of these new emails, you see them passing around links to the Miami Herald series, and like the Southern District of New York was kind of a hotbed for the more sort of like adventurous anti-Trump prosecutors that were allowed to stick around in the DOJ in the first administration. So it became it was like a largely, not exclusively, but largely like liberal coded issue at that time in terms of how its mainstream purchase that it was getting. And then Epstein ends up being re-indicted. He's put in the federal jail facility. He dies in custody. Then there's a whole kind of blossoming of these more like left-oriented conspiracist narratives like TrueAnon and those people because like they think, oh, we can connect this to Bill Barr being the Attorney General, and Bill Barr's father might have hired Jeffrey Epstein to teach at the Dalton School in New York City in the 70s. So there's a lot of dot connecting they can do, right? And the Trump administration was in power when the death occurs. So if people want to make the most nefarious possible inferences from that connects it to Trump in some way, they can. And so, there is a big left liberal interest in it in terms of just the kind of more commercial pop cultural coverage like Netflix and stuff. That's not right wing, really. But they do this like filthy rich documentary that is very like survivor focused. Like we got to lift up their voices. And you see a lot of that style of coverage that kind of gets people maybe of a little bit more of like a Democratic aligned or like loosely political, maybe apolitical, but culturally liberal in some fashion, kind of thinking that the Epstein story is a really important thing to have to be preoccupied with. But then, when the Biden administration comes in, then you do see a more fulsome kind of right-coded variation on why people are so preoccupied with this, because they end up kind of spinning it as they're covering up the client list. Like Elon Musk started touting this around in 2022.
One thing I'll say before we move on to the Biden, because in my mind, and maybe it's just the political circles we were in, I can think of like 3 or 4 things off the top of my head that were immediately more gripping to the American public than the Epstein stuff, even in 2019. Like that story might have had purchase for a little bit, but I feel like peak Me Too stuff was like 2013 to 2015-ish, and then
Me Too was 2017. That's when the Harvey Weinstein thing comes out and everybody says...
Or maybe I'm thinking
that's when they start the Me Too hashtag.
Sorry, okay. I'm thinking of like when all the, I think peak wokeness or whatever was like started in
No,
like
I'm talking
2013.
Me Too specifically.
Sure. So Me Too might have been a few years later. But I feel like the Epstein stuff was never as big of a story in the American mind, especially for 2019, as like every part of COVID was larger than that. Like COVID in general, like lab leak stuff, the mRNA vaccines and all of that stuff. I think the Hunter Biden like laptop story was 2020. I'm not mixing up my elections, right? That was 2020 for Biden coming in, right? The Hunter Biden laptop story, I think had way more salience in the American mind. I think that the general... I feel like all of these topics were way more. I'm sure I heard the name Epstein, but it was nowhere near in 2019, like the level of like every American is thinking about this.
Right, but it ended up like, but it's still like percolating in different quadrants of the ideological
all the whole
spectrum.
BLM riots and everything, of course, the J6 stuff. Yeah,
you're not wrong, but like the foundation had been set for it potentially to explode because you did have these right-wing surrogates like Kash Patel, or Trump supporting surrogates like Kash Patel and Bongino and these other podcast guys saying that, vote for Trump in 2024 because we're going to crush the deep state. And by extension of that, we're going to get the Epstein files released, even though Trump himself was sort of more non-committal, but his surrogates were very much gung-ho about it. And then it was the perfect recipe for it to just explode to even more monumental proportions when Trump's back in office, right? Mm-hmm. Trump did have a personal relationship with Epstein years ago. And they put out this memo last July saying, look, all these kind of common tenets of the Epstein mythology we're dispelling, meaning there's no client list, there's no blackmail operation, there's no predicate to charge any additional people with any sex crimes. And so it just explodes in a way that is orders above what maybe it had been percolating in the background as for the preceding couple years. I'm just saying that like there was a diverse ideological confluence of people that were interested in the Epstein story that, and then you light the fuse and then you add Trump, who's like the dominant narrative anyway, and lo and behold, now it's the number one anti-Trump oppositional narrative of the second term, akin to how much Democrats would have been focused on Russia or Mueller or that narrative in the first term. I mean, look at any congressional hearing now. Epstein is virtually all that Democrats can talk about. I mean, again, I'm not complaining because I find it really fascinating, but from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. But I just think, if we want to sort of look at why this is so salient now and is just transmogrified into this international mega narrative, it's more cross-ideological than maybe I think you might be giving it credit for.
No, just to be clear, hold on, just to be clear so that I can say this for the millionth time, I agree that right now it's captured everybody, which drives me crazy. Gotcha. That's why I keep saying populist. But the thing that exploded it into the average person's mind, I think, was the conservative movement. That absent the conservatives being so obsessed with it, and then absent then acting the guiltiest possible way that you could of turning it into such a huge obsessive point, and now trying to retreat from it as much as possible, such that they refused to release the files. Was it the longest time it had ever been for the House to sit a new representative because Mike Johnson didn't want to sit the new lady
the Arizona lady.
That like it was them that drew. So like if I would have talked to you in 2015 and I said, I got this friend and they don't believe in vaccines or whatever, like I don't know what to do. Like in my mind in 2015, I'm thinking like, okay, your friend is like a crazy hippie person. Whereas today, if I hear about an anti-vaxxer, they're right-wing 99% of the time, right? So, but if I were to say like the anti-vaxxer movement today, I would say it's like definitely like a left-wing phenomenon. Not really. Like it kind of sort of was more of a left. I feel like I don't know if a far left.
I feel like there's still some crunchy left-ish people who are anti-vax.
Yeah, but by and large today, you can track like death rates and everything from COVID from Republican counties and stuff. But I agree that it's a both sides. Everybody's obsessed with it today.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Bongino and that whole clown car of people, they definitely egg this on astronomically. In part because, and here's the basic reason why they fumbled it so disastrously. It's because they can't be honest about it, neither can really anybody, which is that the stuff that people assume to be true, meaning of some kind of pedophilic sex trafficking operation that ensnared all these prominent VIPs, and there was blackmail, and we got to get to the bottom of it. Like none of that was ever substantiated by anything remotely approaching credible evidence, and that's only been verified by the release of millions more records. But nobody wants to say that because you don't want to be in a position like I have been as this like lone wolf, where you're accused of like making excuses for quote pedophiles, or like you're called all the most foul names you can possibly be called if you take any kind of more contrary perspective on this stuff.
Well, while that's true for maybe somebody in your position, it's even worse if you're in Trump's position because all those guys hardcore over-indexed on them. I don't know what the political strategy was, if they legitimately thought they were going to find something, because it's one thing for a person who is reporting on things or talking about things to be like, oh, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's a much different thing. How humiliating was it? Do you remember when I think it was Bongino and Patel were sitting side by side with each other on
Joe Rogan, I think it was.
Was it Joe Rogan? Where they were like,
it was on Fox.
It was on Fox, yeah. And they were like, we've seen everything. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Like, like, if it would have been two Democrats or whatever who were saying this after whatever, okay, fine. But for these guys who were a part of like the whole group of people who were overhyping the fuck out of this shit for so long, like, it makes it a million times worse. So, of course, none of them can ever back off it. You know?
I said at the time, I don't understand how Kash Patel's position as FBI director is sustainable. Anybody can pull up the clip of him in December 2023 as a private citizen saying now infamously, and this quote's going to be seared in my memory for the rest of time, he's saying to the previous FBI director, Christopher Wray, put on your big boy pants and tell us who the pedophiles are, as if he somehow knew and had exclusive insider info that this list of pedophiles was being concealed by the Biden FBI, and Christopher Wray could just open a drawer in his desk or something and tell the public who all these demonic pedophiles were, and they were going to implicate all these Democratic donors, Bill Gates and Clinton and Larry Summers and Reid Hoffman and whomever. And now he has to come out with stone-faced and say, look, I mean, turns out kind of did kill himself. There's no real trafficking. Like, nobody's going to take that seriously.
Yeah.
He's not going to be a messenger that anybody's going to credit as legitimate, given like the comical contrast that you can find in 2 seconds of Google searching with how he approached this issue in the past, when he was just kind of this like flame-throwing, red meat tossing right-wing pundit. So yeah, I mean so the Trump administration kind of laid its own trap for itself in a lot of ways, and they've never figured out how to extricate it themselves from it. So it just keeps
I think
going
it's
on
very
and on
easy
and on.
for them to extricate themselves from it. I think the issue is one of the big drivers, in my opinion, of things like the Epstein story. It's similar to like anti-immigration stuff. I think it's like just general discontent. So in an area where, like, I hate so much about the Trump administration now, and this is one of the reasons why I hate America. I shouldn't say I hate America, but it frustrates me endlessly about American citizens is as long as life is going well, people will generally chill the fuck out about a lot of stuff. Like if gas prices were low, the economy was going much better, affordability was improving for people. Like if all these indicators are going up, I think people might not be as fixated on the Epstein stuff. I still think it would be a pretty sensational story, but I think the fact that like everything is so fucked, and it seems like there's like another fuck thing and another fuck thing and another fuck thing. The Epstein story is that one thing that has maintained its like crystal clear point of this administration is fighting tooth and nail to never release it. So as long as there's like a new fuck up and a new fuck up and a new fuck up, you can keep pointing back at that and go like, oh, what's going on with this? Yeah.
Have you noticed that all the most clever and ambitious Democratic politicians right now, some of whom are planning to run for president, like Ro Khanna, they're now almost toying with a embryonic stump speech that they're going to use within, in the next year or two, Ro Khanna in particular. But you see guys like John Ossoff, who's being, touted as somebody who could potentially run as a Democratic presidential candidate. That guy Talarico, who won the primary in Texas. They're all saying stuff like there's an Epstein class that we all have to band together and dislodge. It's almost like they're trying to do the Occupy Wall Street, us versus the 1%.
It's the populist messaging.
Class.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But the thing with the Epstein class kind of theme is that by invoking Epstein over and over again, you're not just making some kind of like neutral reference to the moneyed elites who are, skewing societal resources or something like that. You're referencing pedophiles. Like, I mean, that's what most people think. Like, that's the word association that the 99% of people will make if you utter Epstein at them today.
Yeah.
But yet they're happy to leverage that into this political talking point now that's going to animate, I guess, the
populace
synthesis of American politics going forward, such that Ro Khanna, I mean, he can't make a media appearance or give a speech nowadays without inveighing against the Epstein class and praising himself for having brought some kind of like vague accountability, and also demanding that like unspecified people be charged with crimes. And also, by the way, he and his little compatriot Thomas Massie, they just slandered 4 random people with no public profile, I don't know if you saw this, as having been complicit in child sex crimes. Ro Khanna went on the floor of the House and said, the Trump DOJ, they're redacting the names of all these powerful men to insulate them from criminal accountability, and they turned out to be guys who had just like literally nothing at all to do with Epstein whatsoever. It was just something that he and Thomas Massie conflated. Thomas Massie said they were incriminated in child sex trafficking crimes. It turned out to be like an auto mechanic and an IT manager in New York And so, I mean, you might not be interested in it, and I get it from your perspective, but I do think in terms of civil liberties and in terms of a lot of downstream negative repercussions of this, it is worth paying close attention to. And, the Democrats are pretty fixated on it at this point. So like,
I agree.
It's almost like, whether or not you like the issue, it's kind of politically salient enough at this point that you have to deal with it to some extent.
Oh, I super don't. I just play video games all day and fucking ignore it.
That's true.
I talk about what the fuck I want to talk about.
That is true.
But there's other stuff, like I don't like talking about the Middle East anymore. I hate it. I think it's annoying. I think most people talk about it.
Out on it.
Yeah, because it's like a bunch of anti-Semitism, but then it's also a bunch of like Islamophobia, and then it's a bunch of like stupid like young people. It's just like the conversations about it are horrible. That's not to say that it's not an important issue and it's not having real impacts domestically here. Or actually across the entire world right now because of the oil squeeze and everything. But I just hate talking about it.
So when people have been, it's like when people in your chat or whomever, your correspondents have been imploring you to talk about Epstein, like what is their argument as to why you should talk about it?
Well, they all think it's the most important thing ever because we're one email release away from uncovering like the actual global blackmail list of the Black Book clients that had a factory of 6-year-olds that were being serially raped by every wealthy person and blah, blah, blah in the world. I'm strawmanning them a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my point is that I haven't made any harsh judgments on it one way or another. I feel like if there was prosecutable stuff in there, I feel like they would have already gone after it, but I'm all okay with other people. If they want to go through the files and explore stuff, they can do that. I just don't, I'm like a very I don't want to say conspiracy in like a super loaded negative way, but I generally don't enjoy deep diving on that stuff very much because usually the evidence is just not there for it. And it's a lot of like reaches and a lot of like associative stuff that's just not as interesting to me. I like more concrete stuff. But then a lot of my audience just interprets it as me either being part of the Black Book pedophile sex ring or it's that I'm covering for them or I don't know.
So this most recent round of Epstein files was released on January 30th, right? And it just so happened by total coincidence, I promise, that I happened to be offline for a couple days. Like a couple times a year, I'll take a detox, right? And I'll just like maybe play Zelda or something.
Sure.
And it happened to coincide with in the most inopportune possible timing, the release of Epstein files. So I was like offline for around like 4 days or something, and everybody thought, oh my God, Tracey must have been exposed as having been on the Epstein list or in the Epstein files. So people were actually searching my name in the DOJ search bar on the website, and sure enough, there were 2 results that come back with Michael Tracey, and it happens to be just like the FBI Communications Department's daily news roundup where they just summarize articles. So I had 2 articles from like 2018 and 2021 or something on totally different topics, but people thought that they had nailed me for that. So that was pretty
You want to know
funny.
something crazy?
Yeah.
You know who wasn't in the Epstein files at all?
Who?
Kamala Harris.
She's not, there's no reference whatsoever?
Probably not.
I bet you there is. Because like,
You know why I'm saying probably not actually? Because I bet if there was, I bet I would know about it because people would be talking about it all the time.
you could, there's a reference to everything. There's millions and millions of files.
I know, but she's still not in there. They avoided
news
it.
Articles and stuff.
You know who's definitely not in there? Hunter Biden, because I feel like I've heard about that too. So look at that.
Did you have commenters demanding that you comment on like the emails that contain references to pizza and stuff?
Yeah, of course. People want me to talk about it, but a lot of it's just very boring to me.
No, but what do you make of this? Because like you're in the streaming world. Because like this is like a bonanza for people in online media on YouTube, millions upon millions.
I
of
just
views
take
everywhere,
huge hits for all of it. Like I also I
you?
hate covering like breaking news. I hate breaking news so much. But obviously these are your huge events. But it's like whatever happens, like I'll know tomorrow for sure what happened, and there's no reason to speculate right now whether it was like who shot the missile and who blew up the school of 176 little schoolgirls or whatever. Like I don't know what the answer is, but I know I'll know tomorrow, and I know that whatever I guess today is literally completely totally inconsequential to everything else. So why cover it? But that's just me. I just don't like it personally. But yeah, I know there's a lot of views to covering this stuff.
I mean, it will never not be amazing to me that the first week after the Epstein files' biggest tranche was released, you had it as like this immediate consensus across all sectors of online media, including places like Breaking Points, where I've been an occasional guest, and places that are at least purport to be a little bit more journalistically reputable.
Whatever that means now.
They thought okay.
Breaking Points was hosting this fucking Zhang guy. Who
I know. I put it. That
Jesus
guy's
fucking
amazing.
Christ.
Tucker just had him on too.
Everybody's having him on now.
Yeah.
Was he on Joe Rogan yet? There was a couple other big people. Yeah, of course. It's always in the Joe Rogan sphere. Yeah.
But like, everybody coalesced around this conviction that the best way that we can tell our followers and viewers and subscribers about what's going on with this latest release of Epstein files is to literally type in pizza, find some decontextualized snippets of emails, and they probably didn't even search it themselves. They probably just saw whatever had floated to the top of the algorithm on X or whatever. And like that's the best research methodology for us to report back to the general public about what is most pertinent to know about the Epstein files. Like I have my own like maybe a little bit more minoritarian research methodology where I wanted to like find particular prosecution memos, or there's actually a lot of interesting revelatory stuff in the Epstein files if you want to know like how the
not
FBI
pedophile
works.
sex ring stuff, but just
No,
like in
but,
terms
like-
of communication and who's talking to who. Like Ben, like I thought Ben's association with Epstein, that was very interesting to me.
That was amazing.
But
Yes.
like people just want the
I'm the one who told
pedophile.
Rokana about that for the first time.
People just want the pedophile sex ring stuff, otherwise they don't.
No,
give a
but like
fuck,
in terms of like the machinations of how the FBI and the DOJ puts together a prosecution like this, which is a very high profile. I mean, a lot of the interesting stuff that I was looking for actually was dispelling the common mythology around what people just assume to be.
What a pointless
what is true
endeavor.
here. Yeah, I know, exactly. But like across the media, streamers, YouTubers, everybody, they all, every social media personality, like, okay, what should we hone in on here? Pizza. That to me was like kind of a turning point. Not that I already wasn't extremely disenchanted and in fact very aggressively like adversarial towards a lot of this new media ecosystem, but like that was a turning point to me. And I'm going to put it in a time capsule and just say, okay, this is what people thought that they would be most informative to transmit out to the public in terms of what they should take away as the key findings from the Epstein files. Just seemingly odd references to pizza from emails in 2013. Meanwhile, like if you actually do search for pizza, which I did because I talked to the Pizzagate guy this past week, like you can actually find like receipts for pizza orders attached to some of these emails that people seem to find so incendiary. And it's just so, like, I hate to use this term because I know people were offended by it, but like Trump coming into office told us that we were, or his supporters said that we're not allowed to use it. It really is like conspiratardation to a degree that is just almost like unprecedented, at least in terms of my adult life experience, in terms of like what everybody just agreed was the most prudent course journalistically in order to report on this story. So I don't know. It's just, I will never cease to be amazed by it.
Yeah. I mean, if one side is covering it and they're getting a lot of views, like there's going to be a lot of pressure from everybody else to cover it. I mean, you saw, I don't know if you've ever followed like with Trump's whole big lie for the 2020 mail-in voter fraud and all that. Did you ever see the what got published? It was like 90 slides from the Dominion v. Fox News lawsuit or whatever. Like there was
I saw some of that, yeah.
ton of pressure inside Fox News. Like every time they talked about bringing on any of these fucking lunatics, Sidney Powell or Giuliani or any of these crazy people, it was always in reference to who's the big owner guy for Fox? Murdoch? No.
Murdoch, yeah.
Yes, Murdoch. Is that, yes. And he's like saying...
News Corp.
Yeah.
I think there's a guy, I think you might be referring to the guy who's in charge of Fox, which is like a subsidiary of News Corp.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not thinking of Murdoch. No, Rupert Murdoch. It is. I am thinking Murdoch.
Right? It might be
it's
Lachlan
Murdoch. It's Murdoch is in emails and they're like talking to each other. Like Newsmax is killing us. Like these people are gaining like so many viewers. Like they are cannibalizing our audience, and this is like a huge concern for them as they're doing the news coverage.
By the way, like, post 2020 election, that was another period where I was denounced as being afflicted with TDS, just hating Trump, and that's my only goal in life is just to vindicate my hatred of Donald Trump because like the 2020 election fraud theories just did not hold up to scrutiny. Like I did a cover story for the New York Daily News one week where I went through methodically went through some of the claims around how like supposedly the turnout in Philadelphia and Detroit and Atlanta and Milwaukee were inherently suspicious, but then if like you compare them to other metro areas, they were actually pretty consistent across the board. So there's just a million people were.
A lot of these claims were literally debunked within like 12 hours. Like there was a big one about Pennsylvania, about how more people voted than had been registered to vote, and this claim came from a guy who was looking at a database 2 years earlier that had to do with like people that were registered for a primary instead of like the actual voter turnout. And like a guy had found this in hours and had tweeted back at him. But that Pennsylvania lie carried through all the way to the ellipse speech on January 6th, or the thing about the. It was Fulton County with the State Farm Arena, right? And the broken pipe.
On Election Day.
Yeah, and they lied about all of that. Like those were just lies that were debunked by within 12 hours by the Raffensperger was the secretary.
Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia.
Yeah, and then he did a video like within 12 hours, and that lie carried through. It actually still carries through to today, but it was repeated on January 6th of the election.
It just goes to show that like so all the Trump adjacent people or the Trump supporting people who would have loved what I was doing on Russiagate because it incidentally seemed to exonerate Trump on some level could just easily swing on a moment's notice to despise me after the 2020 election, which is why I can never kind of consciously determine what it is that I'm going to focus on journalistically by reference to any kind of partisan framing, because I think that's just a fool's errand, and you're never going to make everybody happy.
Well, no, that's why usually people just stick to one side. Like, there are tons of people that watch me when I was friendlier towards conservatives a couple of years ago. The comments that I would always see when I'm on conservative podcasts are, Destiny's actually really smart sometimes, but when he talks about Trump, he's got TDS. So when I see a comment like that, what they're hearing is, when I'm willing to say there are people on the left that are crazy, they're like, oh, this guy's spitting fact. But then if I criticize their side at all, it's like, oh, he's a fucking sellout, retard, idiot, TDS. And people will do that with every political issue ever. So if you have a mixed bag of political issues, the things that align with them, they'll say, oh, this guy's brilliant. I love his thought process. He's really cool. And then when you go over here, like, oh, but he's still deranged and deluded on this stuff. Not even like, well, maybe he's got points over here that I consider, but I disagree. But like, he's deranged and deluded here, but he's super smart and has a great thought process here. That's just how it goes right now, especially.
Yeah, and you're doing a different thing where, I mean, you are, I think, honest in saying that your sort of aim, or one of your main aims in having your public profile, is to support the Democrats, or to maybe
right now,
tell the Democrats like what their best arguments are, like what are the best arguments that Democrats can capitalize on against the Republicans and Trump, et cetera. So like that's a perfectly intelligible and I guess defensible aim if that's what your actual partisan belief is. Mm-hmm. But people sometimes think that I'm being sneaky or cagey when I declare that I actually am not guided by any particular partisan motive, because I'm sincerely not, and I can give like a million examples of like the pendulum swinging back and forth between like when various factions hate me, and it's just incidental, right? Because like if I think that it's journalistically necessary to explain why it is that some of these crazed theories around the 2020 election are worth dispelling, that I'm going to do that, even if you like a year before would have liked what I was saying about Russiagate, or maybe you liked, or you liked 6 months before that, where I was like a little bit skeptical of some of the George Floyd protest excesses and some of the ideology that was spawned from that. But then, we fast forward, and then all these people are on a rampage against me because I'm saying this RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk narrative about Trump being this Avengers Squad hero against the deep state. That's just nonsense. So at a certain point, at least in my experience, you got to just accept that you're always going to kind of swing back and forth between angering this or that faction, and you just kind of have to follow your journalistic intuitions.
Who are other journalist people that you respect or that you think also operate in a similar manner?
Well,
it could be mainstream, alternative, Twitter posters, whoever.
So I was asked recently to become the new podcast partner of Matt Taibbi.
Oh God!
So I have a long-standing respect for Matt Taibbi. I definitely
there's another guy that I hate with all my fiery heart.
I definitely had some misgivings about some of the stuff that he's done in recent years, and I think now he's kind of almost even accepted that some of the approach to Trump in 2024 wasn't great.
Okay.
I will always like Glenn Greenwald. I mean, he's a personal friend of mine as well.
Another guy I super hate. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Oh, man.
I'm sure. But we fight behind the scenes about a lot of stuff too, and still about Trump. And yeah, there are some more. There's some good mainstream reporters too that I would have it's not quite as overtly political in terms of how I would align with them or something. But I think.
For somebody
Ken
like
Vogel at the New York Times does a lot of good stuff. That's one, and there are others. Let's see who else.
I'm curious for somebody.
There's nobody really on Epstein. Like I'm on a raft in the middle of the ocean on that.
Hanania?
Yeah, I think he's still not quite sure if he actually considers himself a journalist or not. I think he's done journalistically oriented things. It's funny.
Oh, well, nowadays, if Nick Shirley considers himself a journalist, then I think we can all be.
It was funny. Like in September, we were at this Epstein survivors press conference. I don't know if you remember that, where like this woman comes up and says, "We're going to make our own client list if the government."
Oh, I think I remember this, and they were getting a bunch of civil litigants together.
In front of the Capitol, but Thomas Massey at that point didn't want to talk to me anymore because he was like angry at me. So I kind of deputized Hanania to go do like a journalistic task on my behalf to like ask Massey some questions and get his answers. So I guess I forced Hanania into some journalistic activity. I mean, I get along with him. I'm friendly with him. We do streams and stuff together.
Can I say, I'm curious. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. What was the last good piece of reporting that you feel like Taibbi did?
Last good piece of reporting that I feel like Taibbi did. Let's see. I mean, he's had some good stuff. He had a series. We had an article recently having to do with the Labour Party in the UK. I'm not going to be able to summarize it well, but
sure.
he's done good stuff.
Okay. Okay.
I'm now stammering because I'm not going to be able to summarize it well. But there was something that was
Because he's a
good.
dog shit reporter who does
that's
dog
not
shit
true.
work.
That's not true. He's
Free
done a lot of
PR
good
for
stuff.
Elon Musk. Absolutely.
I'll still defend the Twitter files. I mean, I think that was perfectly justifiable journalistic practice on his part.
I think the concept
I'm
new
sorry,
owner.
If you're not journalistically interested in the behind-the-scenes conniving between major social media companies and the security state apparatus.
Oh, that would be really interesting.
That's what the Twitter files was fundamentally
No, the
about.
Twitter files was a guy who had a personal hatred for the last CEO, bought a new company, and then brought in a bunch of journalists to talk to his engineers to see stuff that he exposed to them to write articles to hit pieces about it.
And the other journalists that he
100%.
brought on, they were given free reign to search through the archive.
They were
on their own.
given, first of all, you have no idea how much the archive they could search through. None of us do. Only Elon and his
do.
employees do. You don't know what exists. You don't own Twitter. You're trusting that Elon, there's an implicit trust there that Elon is providing everything that would need to be provided to them to do all the digging that they need to do. Number one, and number two, the access they had was talking to guys that were working at Twitter who were searching through stuff for him or making stuff available
All
to
I know
them.
is that Matt Taibbi, Li Fong, he's another one. He's another journalist that I would say I respect. He does a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
He was brought on with Taibbi to do the Twitter files research. They went to the office in San Francisco.
Yep.
And they had basically, according to them, and I trust them, they had unfettered ability to search through the materials that were presented to them. Does that mean that literally everything was provided? I don't know. I'm just saying that what was available to them, they had.
I'm just saying in
through.
any other circumstance, I think that people would have looked at that story a lot differently. Where the new wealthiest man in the world who just bought a company who had personal hatred for the last owner of this company on a platform that was bullying him, bought the new company and brought in a bunch of journalists to write hit pieces about the old owner.
Well, Elon didn't even hate Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey supported Elon taking the company over.
It might at some point. I think it transitioned because Jack got weird or whatever. But Elon was deeply personally bullied by a lot of people on Twitter and everything related to because Twitter was back at the time. People might have forgotten this. But Twitter was considered a somewhat like woke-ish platform.
Yeah, it was.
Right. And Elon's whole political
there was
identity.
A lot of convoluted speech regulation going on around like dead naming trans. And
Sure.
all that
Yeah.
stuff.
And people get real. Oh, and yeah, the trans stuff is animating 51% of the Republican heart, okay, and has been for the past 10 years or whatever. But I'm just saying
it went beyond that. I mean, it went
Sure.
beyond just the trans stuff.
Okay,
there was always very convoluted speech codes that they were debuting.
I'm just saying that if a billionaire bought a company, let's say me and Jeff Bezos start fighting a ton, and then let's say tomorrow I buy the Washington Post and I bring on new reporters to write about how horrible the Washington Post used to be under the old ownership, who happens to be a guy that I had huge beef with and a publication that was like writing a bunch of bad things about me, everybody would look at that and go, okay, bro, you brought in journalists to do hit pieces on the old owners that you now control the access of information they have about them, right? That's like a crazy set of circumstances, regardless if the reporting was good or bad. Like just the start of that is kind of crazy, right? But it's kind of crazy, right?
Irrespective of whatever Elon Musk's motives were, right? We still had a bunch of unimpeachable, verified primary source material that chronicled the surreptitious coordinations that were going on between a major social media company and aspects of the national security state.
Sure, but I mean, I feel like
you could read the primary source documentation. You don't have to take Matt Taibbi or Li Fang or anybody else's word for it. And to me, it was a very illuminating window into how that stuff works.
Yeah, but I would say the vast majority of the people that even bring up the Twitter files never even read them or engaged with them at all.
Did. I mean,
so
a lot of people are dumb. I'm not going to dispute that.
Sure, no, I know. But like, it's not like I see Taibbi or these people fight against these interpretations a lot. But like, one of the things that stood out to me a lot when Taibbi was reporting about like Twitter's coordination with the federal government, like the two big takeaways that people never seem to get from this, because they've never read the Twitter files, is that one, Twitter, generally speaking, didn't cooperate with the federal government. There were a lot of huge lists that were sent for banning people, whatever, that they ignored. And then two was that
there was one email where Adam Schiff, when he was a congressman, tried to contact somebody at Twitter to ban a bunch of accounts, and it seemed like they didn't take action on
Sure,
it.
they were like these might be Chinese accounts.
But I would still like to know that Adam Schiff or his office were trying to get that done.
That's
right?
fine. That's fine. And you can know that. That's okay. But then two, like one of the largest talking points had to do with that laptop story. And Taibbi's like claims on that were that there was zero involvement between the FBI and Twitter relating to that story. And I remember his specific tweet. He said there was no back and forth between the FBI and Twitter for this story, and that might have even been the problem. There was literally no communication. But most people will say like, oh, well, we saw in the Twitter files that people like the FBI were lying about the laptop story and stuff like that. And then all the emails that you do read about Twitter, figuring out like around the laptop story, especially around what to censor and what not to censor, none of it to me looked like we're evil people and we got to follow the government censorship. But like a lot of people who were genuinely in the wake of like Cambridge Analytica and everything else were trying to get things right and didn't really know like what the path forward was, and we're trying to figure it out.
There was a lot of overreach. I mean, Twitter
When you say overreach,
well, I mean, but Twitter did at the time, and this was like I think October of 2020, right? So it was not long before the election. They did ban links to a New York Post article on the Hunter Biden laptop. I'm not saying the Hunter Biden laptop story is the most monumental story in American political history.
Sure.
But I'm saying, I remember I tried testing it out myself, and you couldn't tweet the link or even send it in a DM
for less than one day.
Yeah, for less than one day.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So I would still like to know how that policy came about, and the Twitter files did shed light on what the thinking was behind that policy.
Less than 5% of people will know what you're talking about, though, because people will assume that the Twitter files confirmed that story was censored at the behest of the FBI, which was Trump's, by the way.
No, but I think, I mean, my memory is, I have to go refresh my memory on some of the granular details of it, but my memory was that the social media companies were kind of priming themselves, sometimes in concert with with some government agency, but almost on their own accord, to prove to the public and to their government regulators that they were not going to succumb to any kind of foreign interference campaign as they allegedly had in 2016.
Sure.
So they instituted all these policies that like went above and beyond in terms of potentially curtailing the distribution of certain materials that might be attributed to some foreign actor. And that's what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop story, which I'm sorry, again, I'm not saying it's the most momentous scandal in history again, but the material on that laptop was proven to be authentic. So,
but we don't know. We still don't know if that was a Russian-planted story or not, though.
Whether
we don't
or not
know.
it was,
well,
the material's
what I'm
still
saying
authentic.
is, sure, but it would dramatically
just like the John
change.
Podesta emails were all authentic, even if arguably or allegedly they could have been disseminated as a result of some actor connected.
But that's
with
one of
the
that would be one of the most important parts of the story, right? Is knowing who disseminated that information. Because selective transparency.
It's important. It'll be interesting to know.
No, not interesting to know. It's a crucial, fundamentally crucial, one of the most important parts of the story.
But it wouldn't change one way or another the authenticity of the materials.
No, but it would give you. I think that it would change a lot. Let's say that it came out that you really did kill a dog when you were 22 out of anger, right? Let's say that
I have not. I disavow.
Let's say 50 accounts on Twitter are posting that, right? I'm looking at you and I'm like, okay, that dog killer, that's bad. And let's say they have proof of it. It's like, okay, let's say that there was a new law that was put into place that says that you now have to know the country of origin of everybody that's tweeting a thing. Let's say that I see that 48 of those 50 Twitter accounts are posting from Russia. Now, I would know the fact about you, but it would change the lens through which I perceive that information. Yeah, because now, rather than seeing that you're a dog beater, now what I'd be thinking is, okay, Russia really wants me to know that this guy is a dog beater. Why? It would change dramatically how I would perceive the information in our landscape.
But journalists have acquired information, and therefore the public has acquired information.
Journalists have acquired information from Giuliani.
From a whole host
from
of
Giuliani,
sleazy,
who passed it to the New York Post.
Or even criminal sources who maybe initially obtained the information through the dodgiest possible means that you could imagine, and that is interesting in terms of how the information got acquired.
Yep.
But I think you have to kind of separate that from the
it's
authenticity or lack thereof of the information.
It's inseparable.
How?
Because who is publishing it tells you a lot about why you're reading what you're reading, right? Like there's a ton of information you can read
but
about.
It doesn't change the authenticity of the actual material.
No, but nothing. You don't perceive anything in a vacuum, right?
No.
Like if you're getting leaks from, like the fact that somebody, when Putin is speaking, right? Oftentimes he's speaking, it's political propaganda, it's a lie, right? Or sometimes it'll be a lie. Or when leaders of countries are speaking, it's a lie, right? But that doesn't mean that just because something is a lie, doesn't mean that it's arbitrary or that it's random, right? The lies that they're speaking for a very particular purpose, and it's good to know why they're saying the things that they're saying, right?
But how about this? So in the Podesta emails, right, this is in the 2016 election, one of the things that was unearthed in those emails was the transcripts of speeches that Hillary Clinton gave to Goldman Sachs and other major banking institutions that she had promised during the primaries with Bernie Sanders to release and then never did.
Well, she wasn't president, but yeah, she didn't get elected.
No, what?
Did she say she's going to release them during the primaries, or?
Yeah, she did.
Okay, I don't remember this,
but with Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
And she never did it.
Okay.
But we finally got the transcript of these speeches as a result of these WikiLeaks releases. Now, even if we want to stipulate that the reason why we got the WikiLeaks releases is because some Russian connected hacker got them and then put them onto WikiLeaks. how would that change how we view this transcript of the speech itself, which was determined to be authentic and is unassailably authentic?
You can have a view of the transcript itself, but all of this is being taken into account in a broader political context. It would make me look at the leaker as somebody who really doesn't want Hillary Clinton to be president. And that would influence how I would view other policies. When you've got people like Assange explicitly saying they're not leaking about Trump, and all the leaks happen to be about the other side, it changes a little bit the way that I view leaks. One is because there could be stuff, like in my mind, I don't know if you believe in this epistemically, if you've got two parties, you're better off having no leaks than just leaks of one side. Because I think partial information can be worse than no information because it can lead you to totally crazy conclusions. Like, for instance, the Democratic Party is so corrupt and horrible and crazy, but the Republicans must be clean because nothing of their shit gets leaked. Meanwhile, we've got Witkoff and World Liberty Financial and Trump Phone and the Bitcoins and everything else going on. And it's like, holy fuck.
I mean, I'm always in favor of the more information, the better, even if the partisan distribution of who the information impugns is not even. But like, so for example, in 2020, we finally did get some of Trump's tax returns. That got leaked.
Got like, it breaks my heart. First of all, it was like 2 pages. It was like the front of his 1040.
Whatever it was,
but like 10 years ago.
But whatever,
no schedules, nothing else, but yeah.
Whatever it was we got though.
Uh-huh.
Does it really matter that much to you what the motive of the leaker was? I mean, it could be an interesting side story to be aware of, but I'm more interested in the actual material that was provided.
I think it would heavily influence how I would view the material, and I think it would be monumentally important to know who the leaker was. What if this got leaked 2 days after Trump came out and gave a speech about how much he hates Israel or something, and then you find out like the Mossad was the one that leaked it to who's the name of the lady? It's not Nancy Grace. I don't know why you want to say that. The lady who does it was on MSNBC because I remember watching her. She hyped this up for like 24 hours.
Rachel Maddow?
Yeah. It was Maddow, I think, that did this, and it was such a nothing burger. But it would just dramatically change the way on how I view things. Or also, like in this hypothetical, let's say you've got two politicians. Let's say that both of them have murdered a person. Okay, but let's
keep going back to these murder hypotheticals.
Okay, let's say that both of them had stolen a ton of bubble gum from a gas station. Okay, so we've got two politicians. Okay, and you know, one of them has stolen a ton, or both of them have stolen lots of bubble gum from gas stations. Let's say that you find out that one of them has stolen a lot of bubble gum, but you don't find out about the other person. I feel like the issue with that is that now when we're looking at these two people, we're making assumptions about this person, but we're also making assumptions about this person because it hasn't leaked on them, and it's giving us a one-sided perspective that might actually be worse than if we just had no information at all. Okay, so because then we would both evaluate them on the merits. Yeah.
Let me give you a hypothetical.
Go ahead.
Say in 2020, right?
Yeah.
I get leaked from somebody something that's incredibly damaging on both Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yes.
Or, sorry, I screwed up the hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say I get something leaked from somebody that's incredibly damaging on Donald Trump, but I don't get something on Joe Biden. And they're like roughly equivalent, some kind of financial impropriety. I'm still screwing up the hypothetical. The point is, if I get leaked something that reflects negatively on Donald Trump, but I can't couple it with something that also reflects poorly on Joe Biden, should I withhold the material on Donald Trump just because it doesn't balance out in terms of showing revelatory information on both candidates? I would think that would be totally arbitrary. And although I would welcome anybody to also leak me something on Joe Biden, the mere fact that I have something on Trump would be more than enough reason to put it out there, even if it doesn't satisfy people's cravings for some kind of almost artificial balance.
Not artificial balance, but real transparency. But so I think that in that example, I would agree that you should publish whatever. But what if you were somebody who wanted transparency from politics in general, and you were really trying to find some tax forms or whatever else, but you were consistently and constantly only digging on one side? And you finally found something that would change the way that I view it. It's like, well, you're not going to release anything. You don't even search on the other side. So if I were to find out that all the leaks and everything are coming eventually through these Russian channels, well, obviously, Putin fucking hates Hillary Clinton and absolutely doesn't want her anywhere near the presidency. So it's not going to be surprising to me that Russia's going to try their hardest to do the Podesta email hacks and leaks. I think probably that laptop story, I think was a Russian-planted laptop. Like all of these things releasing from one side.
I don't think there's any evidence that was a Russian-planted laptop, but it doesn't even particularly matter.
There
could have been something shady in terms of Rudy Giuliani acquiring it from whomever, but I don't think
we know that I think ultimately that the drive that ended up
Russian planted, that kind of gives the impression that it must have been inauthentic material that was pilfered from the laptop, when it's all proven to be basically authenticated. Whether or not it's important, some of it wasn't.
But when we say authenticated, like
meaning legitimate material. I mean, it was real.
Yes, but like an amalgamation of stuff from like different time periods and different email inboxes and everything that happened to be on one laptop. Like it was put there because somebody wanted somebody to see it all. Like it wasn't just like a laptop with like random files in a folder.
No
it
doubt
was
about
like,
it.
yeah, but like that.
But that's how a lot of like, information gets out there. Like somebody
Hold on.
somebody
Firstly,
has a political motive.
no. There's not a lot of
Rudy
information because a guy left a laptop supposedly at a blind repairman's shop that happens to turn it over to Rudy Giuliani that makes copies of this drive that look like they've been edited on some of these files and then hand it off to like other publications or whatever. And I don't even know if I think the FBI might have finally gotten the original drive, but originally they were given like a copy or an image, a disc image of it. That is not a normal story.
I went to that.
That's a really weird story,
I
right?
visited that computer repair shop in Delaware actually, just to confirm that it existed.
Did the guy make eye contact with you?
They were not taking any queries at that point because they were in such a firestorm. Oh, what is this thing, by the way? Is this like a radio DJ?
It's my soundboard. It makes sounds. I want to make sounds.
Can I pick a sound?
Sure. Here's Cenk sounds.
I'm gonna go bro one.
Bruh.
That's pretty funny, actually.
He's such a goofball.
Oh my God, you're giving me flashbacks with the jank.
Yeah, I love Cenk. He's my.
That's the donor class.
Yeah, he's a guy.
Bruh.
I'm gonna get one of those. That is funny. How are we doing on the stream here? Are people enjoying this, or are they angry at me? I mean, I always assume that most commenters anywhere that I appear on the internet now will just loathe me.
That's good.
95.
If you don't have haters, you're not trying.
confidence.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think we're going in the United States?
Stephen,
What?
that's a very open-ended question.
Do you think that? How long do you think this?
I almost want to sing a song as an
That's
answer
okay.
to
We don't need
that.
to sing along. What do you think? How long do you think?
Do you want to?
How long do you think the Iranian war? I'm never singing on the stream. How long do you think the Iranian war is going to go on for?
We've all gone to look for America.
Bruh.
You never sing, really? I mean, I see all these musical instruments you have around.
Yep, that was when I was in college, a long time ago. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, sorry, restate the question.
How long is the Iranian war going to go on for?
So, I mean,
Do you think markets or oil prices will force Trump to capitulate, say victory and then leave, or?
it's hard for me to imagine Trump willingly capitulating in a way that is just obviously a humiliation for him. Meaning, if he just says, okay, guys, pack it up, we're going home, we're just going to declare victory, and Iran continues to restrict passage on the Strait of Hormuz and continues to
Well, I think Iran would stop.
I don't know, but why would Iran stop at that point? It seems like the calculus...
Because
that
they want
Iran-
America to get the fuck out and stop
Well, I
destroying
know,
their shit.
I mean, one of the demands that the Iranian government officials that I've seen have been making lately is that all the Gulf Arab states that house American bases have to eject the American force presences.
Sure, but
And
that's
so-
because Iran right now is something that I think Trump fails to understand. He's a fucking moron. Is Iran is fighting like an existential war for the existence of their regime. So they've like pulled out all the stops. But I think if they could get America to fuck off, I think they would be like, yeah, we're gonna go clean our minds up and
But even
peace out.
if like Trump decides, okay, maybe we'll kind of like call it a day on this particular phase of the operation, that's not going to be the end of it. You're still going to have in place a new supreme leader whose father, mother, wife, and son were all killed.
No,
in
I
an
agree.
American
It would be bad. Like Iran wouldn't be happy with it.
No, but I'm saying it's not going
and Trump wouldn't have like a total victory.
The conflict is still going to continue in perpetuity to some degree or another.
Yeah, but what is
especially
Trump-
because they can then just resume their nuclear.
I don't disagree.
development.
I don't disagree with any of this. I'm not asking
So
you
that's
for.
why that's why I
this is
think-
why I'm saying the whole thing is fucking retarded. But like, cause like, what are we doing right now?
But that's why.
Do you think Trump is going to survive $200 a barrel oil, or
But that's
we're
the-
looking at losing the Senate from the Republican side? That's not even supposed to be possible.
But that's why that's why I question whether there's even a scenario where Trump could just do this kind of premature withdrawal or something and end this current phase of the conflict, because that's just going to allow for like an even more radicalized and emboldened Iranian government to, first of all, declare that they defeated the United States, which I don't think Trump is going to take kindly to.
Yeah.
And declare that, Trump, now they're probably going to declare a new fatwa against Trump or something. And they're probably going to tell lots of people to take retaliatory action against Trump. So I think that, like, by the logic to the extent that you can discern any logic, which you really can't in terms of why this mission was launched, what Trump said the night that the bombing started probably is the only viable outcome from his perspective, which is regime change. Otherwise, I don't see the scenario where Trump can just like pick up his ball and go home. So I'm doubtful that even if there is economic ramifications here that are very disruptive to the global economy or whatever, that they really even can just quit. Because like,
I understand,
why
but I feel
would Iran
like
negotiate a political settlement with the United States at this point?
well, to survive, right?
But or maybe they think that look, they've withstood this onslaught from the United States and the regime is still intact.
Yeah, but they're
So maybe
not
they can
really
press on.
surviving, right? Like they're getting fucked.
I
They're
agree.
getting
I mean,
super mega
they're
fucked
getting
up.
kind of decimated, sure, but like I don't even know like who could there has to be some political settlement, right? And
ordinarily I would agree with you, but you
Israel's
are-
strategy seems to be to just take everybody out of
regime
any
change, yeah.
prominence.
I
So they got
would
rid of
understand what
this
you're saying.
Larjani guy who
Well, here, I agree with what you're saying on their ordinary political analysis, but like Trump and the like populist type people, especially Trump, have this ability to just waltz from one thing to the next. Like I feel like the largest thing was if you were reporting on tariffs when these things dropped, it was a nightmare because they would change hourly. And there were so many times where Trump came out strong and then like, oh no, it looks like interest rates might be ticking up, or there's talk of China, or there's talk of like Japan and Canada selling their treasury bonds, or the stock market is starting to dip hardcore, where it seems like Trump is willing to walk back as soon as he feels like there might be actual on paper ramifications. I say on paper. Yeah, on paper like ramifications where people's portfolios are measurably changing. Or fuck, I saw pictures of gas today. I don't know if this was real or fucking bullshit, like $7.50 or $8.50 a gallon in some fucking place. There's no
California,
way
probably.
Americans can't do that for weeks.
I know,
or
but
months.
it's one thing to
like Trump's gonna get
it's
killed
one thing to
in a video game.
taco, Trump chickens out or whatever.
Yeah.
On tariffs, it's another if we're talking about an ongoing, active, fluid military situation. And we also have to have these Marine Expeditionary Forces headed to the Persian Gulf with the idea, presumably, being that they're going to do some kind of ground deployment. We don't know the scale of it or what the precise mission of it will be, but it seems like Trump maybe wants to have some ground deployment to take over the Kurg Island or whatever it's called, and somehow drive the Iranians out of the Strait of Hormuz such that commerce can continue. And so I just think it's like categorically different to say, as a matter of economic policy, maybe the pain being caused by this broad blanket imposition of sanctions is something I can rein in if the markets drop, and having a live military situation with like thousands of American troops in the fight and lots of other interests in terms of the Gulf states and Israel and whatever. It's just not something that Trump can just wave a magic wand and all of a sudden be done with in the same way that he could do with tariffs.
I mean, on ordinary circumstances, I would agree with you, but I think in this, I think he literally can. I feel like he's going to pull everybody out.
What do you think he's going to do?
I think we're going to leave and he's going to say we won and then just be done with it. Because these gas prices can't persist like this. Because like authoritarians have the benefit of not having to respond much democratically because they don't care about that. But like there are limits to what people will tolerate, such for like their personal safety or other things. And I just can't see Americans tolerating that much.
But how do we know that Iran is going to even allow the Strait of Hormuz to reopen if the U.S. withdraws?
I'm just guessing, but my guess would be it would take the American boot off their neck. Like Iran historically has played by the generally understood rules of war in every other thing. Even when our B-2s or whatever came in and fucked
they
up
calibrated the reprisal.
Yeah, 100%. And then they announced like they killed one person. Like we won their shit, right? So,
but now they're saying, look, we're not negotiating with the United States anymore.
Because the United States is saying we're not stopping until your regime is dead. Right. All of you are gone. So I think if the U.S. is like, okay, we're going to change our mind and back up. I think that.
So what Trump's going to say, oops, take it back. Here's an olive branch. I don't really see that.
I think Iran would desperately jump on olive because Iran is never surviving this conflict in the long term. Say what you want about
the olive branch to. I mean, this new supreme leader who we've never even seen on video.
If they wanted a leader, they could find one.
Possibly.
This is like when
I just think Trump
this is like when Trump was like, we're like, well, he's gone. Abrego Garcia's gone. We can't get him back from fucking from El Salvador. We can't get him back from El Salvador or whatever. Seriously, this is before we, of course, kidnapped the leader of fucking Venezuela. But it's like, come on, like I think I understand what you're saying. I think you're trapped in conventional political analysis where Trump can just do. Because if I would have asked you like a year ago, do you think that Trump's admin could block the release of the Epstein files and stop talking about it? We would say, of course not. But I mean, they have, right? But
well, they didn't block. I mean, they ended up not blocking it.
Well, they blocked it for as long as possible until Trump was like, "Fuck it, I don't care about this shit anymore." I guess, and fuck Mike Johnson over, and then now everybody's getting fucked on the Republican side for it. But
I just think that when Trump launched the war on February 28th, he opened Pandora's box in a way that's not going to be able to be contained. Other stuff that he could have contained a little bit more concretely, right?
I agree
Like
to some extent, yeah. When you kill like 36 of their leaders or whatever in a single night, yeah, you kind of
I mean, the tariff policy is something he could just basically flip a switch and remove. You can't do that with this giant military conflagration.
I mean, he could just say, fuck it, I'm leaving. He tried to at the end of his first term with Afghanistan. He was like, let's just pull everybody out, fuck this shit, you know?
He could, but then, you got Israel that still has its own kind of agenda to some extent that is more thoroughgoingly regime change, but Trump seems to agree with that. I mean, that's why he gave the speech the night of the bombing starting and said, look, Iranians, rise up, overthrow your government.
Yeah.
That seems to be what he wants, and it seems to only be escalating, and it seems like just the past couple days, I mean, there seems to be a lot of reporting indicating that there is a planned ground operation of some kind, which is why these Marine expeditionary
2,000
units
Marines
are
or
going.
whatever.
Yeah. And then there was another one that left from San Diego, I think.
Once we start having ground troops committed, then we're in an area where I would agree with you, just like physically. Like right now, it's an air campaign, and Trump can say and do whatever the fuck. Like this administration's cooked anyway. The Republican Party is cooked as fuck right now anyway. But if we start sending in Marines and we start getting people on the ground, one, you obviously when you start setting up the logistics, you have people there, you got a whole thing going on. But two, the thing that people don't consider often is if there's a big attack, then ends up killing like 30 or 40 American soldiers. Now we're fucked because now we're stuck here for a long time. And now the American people are going to start to feel.
Then we're rocketing even higher and higher up at like warp speed on the escalation ladder.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Because and even for weeks now, like people in the administration, especially Mike Waltz, but others have been telegraphing this idea that there might need to eventually be, and Trump has even signaled openness to this, to be some sort of ground deployment to retrieve the
nuclear material.
Uranium.
Yeah.
So this has always kind of been in the cards, right? And maybe like they'll justify it by saying, and you'll often see this, it's not boots on the ground if they're special forces, or if it's not like some giant deployment of the
Once
army.
you start having like the army and forward operating base and all this bullshit,
if it's not something on the order of Iraq, then it's not really boots on the ground somehow, as though these special forces guys are wearing slippers.
Sure.
But I just don't really see much reason to think that the cycle of continuous mutual escalation is going to level off anytime soon. And I think that was foreseeable just when Trump decided to open this can of worms of like unknown parameters and unknown.
I mean, who could have guessed that he would have? I think this is true, right? Yesterday, did he lift sanctions on Iran?
They paused
for
sanctions
the oil stuff
for like a period of like about a month on oil exports.
Starting yesterday,
so they
right?
are taking some actions to try to mitigate the economic impact.
In like the goofiest way possible.
But they're still trying to take some mitigating actions, right? Which maybe they could cite as something that they're doing to try to address people's economic concerns around this without just kind of nixing the entire military operation prematurely. Yeah. I don't know, like Trump has been saying for weeks, and Hegseth and others have been saying for weeks that basically we've obliterated their entire military capacity, right? And yet, like I think it was just like 3 days ago, that Hegseth said, today will be the most expansive strike package, is how we phrased it, on Iran, meaning the most intense day of airstrikes on Iran of the entire war, just like yesterday up to that point was the most intensive day of airstrikes. So it seems like they're just kind of like escalating further and further and further, and losing bandwidth.
Yeah, which shouldn't be happening. Sorry, okay, wait, it's back. That was weird. Trump is censoring me. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
It was the Mossad, it was Epstein.
Somebody,
Epstein might be alive, he could be pulling the strings.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll be gone before May 1st. That's my prediction.
May 1st?
Yeah. I think we gotta be. We gotta be.
That's possible. Because, I mean, I think the initial time horizon that was suggested was like 4 to 6 weeks, right?
I don't know.
So that would be consistent with what they at least sort of
were planning
posited
to do?
Would be the rough time frame.
Sure. Imagine trying to run with high gas prices.
Trump has also said, and I have no reason to doubt that this is his intent, that to the extent that new political leadership is ever going to be appointed in Iran, it's going to be leadership that he has to approve or even that he has to personally select. Just like he did with Venezuela, just like he has done now with Gaza. And so I don't understand how Trump could fulfill on his pledge to basically sort of craft in his own image a new governing regime for Iran, and yet somehow the United States is also going to fully withdraw. I just don't buy it. I mean, it's just look at like what happened with Iraq, right? Like after the Gulf War, 1991 or 90. The The U.S. and the international coalition, they drive Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. There's a debate, should the U.S. go into Iraq? Should they invade Baghdad and overthrow Saddam? They don't do it. And then for the next 12 years, you have these kind of intermittent, airstrike campaigns and no-fly zones imposed. And the U.S. is never really quite out of Iraq at that point. It's just a long-term, slow-moving, incremental lead-up to a full-fledged regime change operation finally being launched by Bush in 2003 with 9/11 and the whole sort of frenzy around that time, kind of seen as giving him license to do so. I just think that the can of worms was opened here, such that we're not done with Iran anytime soon, even if they do want to maybe pause this current wave of airstrikes or something. Just like I said the same thing, and people told me I was crazy when he did what was seen as a more limited strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities in June of 2025. Because it's not just that to me always was not just some carefully circumscribed military intervention that was just going to be a one and done. It was just a new phase of active kinetic warfare between the United States / Israel and Iran that was inevitably going to blow up again, or it was going to come to a head again in short order. And sure enough, that happened, and it's even more the case now because of the scale and intensity of this operation. It doesn't lend itself to just picking up your ball and going home now. There's going to be some final resolution that is going to be perceived as having need to be imposed. You can't, otherwise you're just going to allow an even more radicalized Iranian government to fester there and plan some kind of retaliation against the United States in perpetuity.
We'll see. Yeah.
How long have we been going?
When did you get here? Probably about 3 hours.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Do you have any big predictions politically for the next? Do you think the Democrats are going to win the Senate?
I think the historical trends already pointed toward the Democrats winning in the midterms.
Win the Senate.
The Senate, I haven't done a deep dive on the map.
Do you think the SAVE Act?
What's the tipping point state for whether they could win the Senate?
Pennsylvania. I have no idea. Actually, I don't know. I saw the poly market odds flipped to 51%.
I hate poly market.
Oh, okay.
One of the Kalshi people. Is that Kashi? What's the other?
Kashi sounds right. Is this KAS?
Yeah, they tried to proposition me recently. Hey, do you want to be a sponsored influencer or something? I'm like, no, I actually despise your parasitic industry. So I hate using the prediction markets. That's
Do you hate gambling in general or just prediction markets?
I don't gamble myself, really.
Okay.
If I'm in Las Vegas or something, I'll just set aside $100 to go out for the night or something, whatever.
Okay.
But nothing that crazy. I just don't find it that pleasant. I find it too stressful.
Sure.
Even if it's just $100, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter that much at the end of the evening. But I just don't find it that pleasurable of an experience.
Okay.
But prediction markets, I feel there's so much potential for corruption there, and
I agree.
And
ignore
overly quantifying literally everything is I kind of find annoying on principle.
Okay, sure. Okay, so forget the Senate stuff. Do you have any big predictions? Do you think the next 6 months or 9 months for this year? A big Michael Tracey prediction that you think will happen that nobody else is talking about, or that you think is a brave, strong prediction?
You know what? I am a little bit, and Hanani always gives me a hard time about this because he's into really making lots of predictions and
good
keeping tabs on all the prediction markets and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't make that many predictions because I almost find that it becomes almost like a cognitive distortion where everybody feels like they have to be constantly predicting things out into the future and kind of framing their analysis of what's going on in the present in terms of what they can forecast out in the future. And so, I don't know, I like to look at, I like to try to, as best as I can, synthesize what's going on now and, draw inferences from it rather than say, here's what's going to happen in 6 months. It's it becomes like a cottage industry, this Professor John guy, he now is supposed to be some kind of prophet because he said that Trump was going to win and then the U.S. was going to attack Iran, as though, that couldn't be something that you might have an intuition would happen.
The reason why
based on the available evidence.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The reason why
your predictions, and I'll tell you if I agree with them.
I don't make too many bold predictions. I do think we're going to do pretty good in the midterms. I made my prediction about
yourself
Iran.
In the royal we with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, of course. Right now I do for sure.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll change in the future, but
how about Democratic not presidential nominee?
I don't think about it. That's so long away. I think the obsession over
the machinations are going on. Already.
Yeah, I know, but I don't care. We'll see. Who knows what could happen?
Who would be your preferred?
I don't even know what the policies are of these guys. Like, would Gavin Newsom be a president in the same way he is a governor? I have no idea.
I know, but
I don't know.
as of
I
today,
like Newsom.
Okay, do you?
I like Newsom. I like guys that bully Republicans. That's all I care about right now.
I mean, he mixes it up at least.
He does. Well, I was going to say the reason why I like predictions or appreciate predictions is because if you feel like you have keen insight into politics or stuff going on in the past and your analysis is good, ideally you should be able to project some of these things somewhat into the future. The thing that I don't like when I've argued with all these fucking losers, the Glenn Greenwald, I'm just kidding. No, half kidding. But like the Alex Jones, yes, the Alex Jones, the Tim Pools, like all these types of people, is they're always doomsdaying. They're always giving the worst, the dumbest predictions ever, the craziest shit ever. They're always saying this over and over again. And it's like, well,
Glenn does many predictions. Alex Jones, yes, of course he does, because
Sure.
he also thinks he's some kind of prophet who has like
exactly. But I think that if you have somebody who's made
future.
if you have somebody who's made a bunch of predictions and all of them have been wrong over and
like
over and over
Cenk.
again,
I mean, Cenk does that constantly.
yeah, then I think that gives that. That's
like
good
pundit
to
brain,
know.
pundit brain.
Yeah, but it's good to know because these are the guys who. Because what is voting besides like kind of making a prediction, right? In a way, when you vote or when you endorse a candidate, you're saying, I think this person's going to be better for the country than this person. So like if I look at Dave Smith, right? Okay, well everything you predicted about Trump, which you prospectively should have been able to know was going to happen, like the opposite of what you said would happen, and you should have known better. That would, I think, it should cause people to hedge a little bit more on his predictions in the future. But like there are no accountability mechanisms or anything for pundits that constantly get things wrong. So
rather than making a prediction in 2024 about what I saw as likely to come in a second Trump presidency, what I focused on doing was to say to like a Dave Smith type, look, the image that you're putting out of Trump and this anticipation that you're kind of ginning up about what a realistic understanding of a second Trump administration would be, it's bogus. It's total bullshit. You're doing pure groundless propaganda.
Yeah.
Like that was enough for me without having to make a firm prediction about something or other. Like I couldn't have predicted that on February 28th, like there would be an Iran war launched. I did say stuff at the time like, okay, look, I mean, we have now 4 years of data with what Trump did when he was in office the first time. He attempted regime change in Venezuela. It stands to reason that he might be intending to attempt to do that again, especially if he's bringing in Marco Rubio, who's already this hardcore hawk on Western Hemisphere and Cuba, Venezuela, et cetera. So like it stands to reason that that's something to be cognizant of, right?
Yeah, but I think
when you get into like a firm prediction game, it almost becomes like a parlor game.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I don't think it has to be firm, but I think the types of predictions that people make or the types of things that people try to predict, I think it gives you some insight into whether or not they have any fucking idea about what they're talking about anyway, especially in areas that you feel like they should have a lot of knowledge in or areas that you have a lot of knowledge in. So, and if people are wrong about these things over and over again, I think there should be a huge credibility hit. One of the biggest issues that I fought over, that I don't know how the fuck this is still the case, is Republicans, for some fucking reason, keep getting credit for trying to balance the budget, and they fucking don't. And that was the thing that was so easy to call. He didn't do it in his first term for no fucking reason. We had Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We were deficit spending more and more and more, and it was starting to get even more than Obama was, I think, in his last term. I think even before the COVID shit happened.
Reduce the national debt.
Yeah, exactly. But like all these guys, and especially all these weird crypto finance people that have gotten involved, is like, well, I think the debt is the number one most important issue. It's like, okay, then why the fuck would you vote for Trump?
Moved on from that
I know, but they were so wrong. And if you're so
$200 billion budget request from the Pentagon,
Jesus, yeah, on top of everything else. And how can you be sorry? Or for people that thought that Doge was going to be wildly successful, when Elon Musk comes out and he says he's going to cut $2 trillion from the budget,
it was garbage.
Our discretionary spending is 1.7. You're retarded. But not only are you retarded, everybody who thinks you're going to be successful is retarded, because how could you possibly think that when he's so stupid? But what I'm saying is that
if you tried to kiss up to him and say, Elon, I'm available. I will help you audit the Pentagon.
Oh, even more sad with that.
They didn't even pretend to try to do anything.
Even
like
more
that.
sad than that. Do you remember? I think it was Brett. No, I think it was Eric Weinstein who was on some podcast, and he
never makes any sense to
he
me.
was crying. He's like, the Trump administration.
Not high enough to understand what he's
the Trump administration. You only need. You have to lower your IQ. You need to get drunk to understand this fucking moron. But for this guy to be on podcast, like, I can't believe the Trump administration hasn't called out to any of us yet, and the intellectual dark web to be in the cabinet. It's like, are you fucking serious?
Put me in, coach.
I'm just saying that it's frustrating that it's like when we come around again and all these pundits are telling you who to vote for and who's going to do the best job and everything. It's like, well, you guys missed every single thing about this administration. Why the fuck is anybody listening to you? That's the frustrating part.
I agree. If there are pundits who make it a habit of theirs to
when you endorse a candidate, you are making predictions. I think when you endorse a candidate, I think you are. Yeah, I just don't like the lack of accountability.
I think you're perfectly entitled to look at the argument that was given for why XYZ pundit endorsed a certain candidate, and then compare and contrast it to what actually panned out.
Yeah,
that's perfectly valid.
I don't think you need to predict like the budget's going to increase by $227 billion. But that's all I think. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, do you want any closing final thoughts
Closing
or parting?
thoughts? Would anybody care for another song? Any requests?
Does
You want to do a duet?
No. I don't say.
Does anybody want me to take my shirt off? No, I'm not
No,
doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to traumatize any of the innocents.
God, I hate this
Viewers.
guy. He's such a fucking.
He speaks in this constant like elliptical sort of hinting, winking, cryptic way, where it just doesn't make any sense. But like for some reason, lots of people pretend that it's this.
But all these intellectual
like
dark
magisterial
web,
insight.
all these IDW guys like speak like
I
this.
pulled up this clip. There was a clip of him on Piers Morgan recently where he's talking about like his interpretation of Epstein. And I guess like people are supposed to find it really smart, but it's just like this tornado of pure blather that doesn't even make any sense. It's just amazing. What are any concluding thoughts from you? Like what do you make of this? Was this a worth your while? I mean, if you were going to be on the stream anyway.
Yeah, I'm saying okay,
What
chat.
would you be doing if I didn't mosey on in?
Probably just covering random political stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was okay. Yeah, good. I think
I enjoyed it.
I do think we wouldn't have spoken about any of these topics if Kamala was president. We'd be talking about much better stuff.
Maybe so. Maybe we'd be on a holiday to a tranquil Iran right now together, taking a little boat ride through the canals of.
Or we'd be arguing about should we have single payer healthcare or a public option, or
Yes.
what should we do with all this extra money that we're not wasting at the Pentagon, or not tariffing the entire world. Maybe Canada and Mexico would be sending us brand new awesome cars. Who knows? We could have been building the tallest skyscrapers. We would have hover cars.
Yeah, but
99
there might
cents
be like
gasoline.
there might be active military conflict with Russia over Ukraine at this point. Hard to say. Although
Based. Oh my God, you're
didn't
speaking
change
right
the
to my
status quo.
heart right now.
I know you
Oh
would really
my
enjoy
goodness.
that. I know you would really enjoy that.
Let's see. On one
but-
hand, we could be going to war with Greenland, Canada, Mexico, getting rid of Maduro and bombing the fuck out of Iran, or we could be fighting with Russia. I would much prefer the Russia
Trump's
fight.
basically continued the policy status quo from Biden in terms of the weapons provision to Ukraine, and he's actually loosened restrictions on long-range missile
The
strikes into
restrictions
Russia.
have gotten loosened, but the Republicans have, and Trump has continued the dramatic fight against Ukraine and supporting them and trying to tie every bit of support we would give Ukraine. If it was a Democratic leader, if it was Kamala, we would be giving more support to Ukraine than Trump is.
Okay, but like when the rubber hits the road on a policy level, the policy is basically the same as the status quo under
Yeah, but
Biden.
time moves forward. If I show you a 5-year-old and then I show you him when he's 10 years old and he hasn't grown at all, and you go, well, I mean, he's the same height as he was 5 years ago. That's not acceptable, right? The support that we give to Ukraine should scale over time, I would imagine, especially with the mission and everything else, but it hasn't. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the pretense of trying to come to some kind of diplomatic solution in Ukraine, I am favorable toward that on principle. It just has been sort of a fiction because it's not tied to any change in the underlying policy.
also, yeah, wait, I don't think we do sell stuff. I don't know if we give stuff directly to Ukraine anymore. I'm pretty sure most of it is
Trump
funded
came
through.
up with a mechanism that he claims is these NATO countries paying the United States for these weapons now, as opposed to the costly and politically perilous giant congressional appropriations under Biden, but it's still the status quo. I still don't fully understand how it is that Trump is sending these weapons to Ukraine without charge.
Well, I think we're just selling it
that they're
to.
getting paid for them.
We're just selling it to European people, and then we're.
I
and
know,
then they're,
but there's also direct provisions to Ukraine itself, and not all of it
Well,
is
it's probably
routed
done in
through
the form of
NATO.
like a loan
It's
or
still-
something,
it's
or-
still- I have to do more reporting on it, actually. I filed some FOIAs, and I'm not satisfied with what I've learned so far, but I'll report back.
Doesn't sound like the status quo, though.
Not in terms of the mechanism by which the weapons are being provisioned, but the weapons are still flowing, and
Not as much
it's
as they
diff-
could be, though.
It's different from 2022 because in 2022, like the Europeans were not in a position where they could pick up any of the slack, really, or much of it from the U.S. But now they've kind of like built up their military industrial capacity a bit more in the ensuing years.
Imagine if they were doing that and the U.S. was still helping. Oh my goodness, we could have so many more interceptors for Trump's war with
You and I
Iran.
would be marching on Moscow right now, and Putin would be hanging from a meat hook. Is that what you
Maybe he'd be hiding underground like Saddam was in the little cave thing. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for
Yeah,
chatting.
I enjoyed this.
I appreciate it. I hope. Good luck. What's your next thing you're doing? Your next public
thing
debate
that I'm
or
doing,
show
public
or whatever.
debates, I don't know. I have stuff scheduled. I think I'm going to be going to that pro-regime change in Cuba rally in Hialeah on Tuesday. So if you want to go and
If I fly back in time, if it's still going on at night, I'll be there. Okay. Yeah. And then final thing, where can people?
do you want to exchange numbers or do you want to just
Probably off stream, so
communicate?
yeah.
Okay. No, I think we should announce our numbers for all the.
Where can people find you? What do you want them to follow you at?
Yeah, Substack is mtracy.net. I also contribute to other publications. I had something in the Wall Street Journal recently. And then X is mtracy, Tracey with an E, make sure. It's the Irish spelling.
This thing?
And yep, that's it. And then also X on YouTube. I don't put as much of an emphasis on that, but I try to remain as much as I can anchored in the written word, which is going out of fashion
Unfortunately.
these days.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm going to be a stickler, and I'm going to be nostalgic for when not everybody thought that the only way to consume information about political events is to vegetate in front of some dopey podcast.
Based. All right. Well, thank you for joining. I love
All
you
right.
guys
So
very
long,
much.
everybody.
I'll see you guys. I think I might stream tomorrow a little bit. We'll see, depending on what